Okay, we're at 4 o'clock. Thanks everybody for, especially those who just came from the last meeting that was a couple hours. Thanks so much for coming today. I should have probably brought up the agenda ahead of time, but I do just want to first acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional unceded territories of the Comox First Nation. And for those that are in the gallery today, if there is an emergency, you can exit through the door that you came in, but we also down this hallway have an exit, and through the committee room off to the side there's another exit. And Director Hillian, did you have a question?
Chair, I was going to move that we move Director Lee's matters up to early on the agenda to accommodate her attendance.
Fair enough. Yep. Excellent.
And Chair and Directors, that would be matter F1 under reports, Black Creek Oyster Bay Service Committee.
F1. There we go. Perfect. Yep. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. Thanks very much for doing that, Director Hillian. And let me get back to wherever it was I was getting lost in. And there is a recommendation to go in camera. Excellent. Any questions on going into camera? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And there's the adoption of minutes. Excellent. Any questions on the minutes? Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Any business from minutes? There will be none. Petitions and delegations. So we do have a delegation first from Fortis and then Curtis Road Residents Association. And we do have a...
Sorry, Chair, do we want to consider the Black Creek Oyster Bay matter before the delegations?
Before the delegations?
Yeah, I think
sure, you don't want to be part of this? Fair enough. All right, let's go to F1, just like a Formula One racer.
Black Creek Oyster Bay Service Committee minutes from May 27th. Second.
Excellent. Are there any questions regarding those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes.
Move recommendation 1.
Excellent. Any questions on the recommendation? Seeing, Director Grieve.
Just speaking to the recommendation, we have a bit of a problem regarding jurisdiction over a Crown land grant that was created a park by the Oyster River at the time of the separation of the SRD and CVRD. The language from the letter's patent is a little ambiguous in that it gives the jurisdiction over the water service to the CVRD staff for administration for that local service area, and it gave the park itself to the SRD. And being that there's it's a regional park, but being that there's only one participant in that service, in electoral areas, if there's only one participant, then it falls to the greater board for all decisions. So right now we're waiting for a decision from SRD to be allowed to drill an extra well. The application was made a few years ago for a grant, and we have is 625. 550, okay. That we have pending to do the extra well, but unfortunately we haven't had permission to go on the site. So there's a little ambiguous language about control over that park for this service, and we're just asking that we meet with the ministry and iron it out, because right now it's a bit of a problem, and we've already asked for 2 extensions on the grant, and we're facing the possibility, if we can't get that well drilled by the end of the summer, that we're going to have to give all that money back to the province. So
Excellent.
It's important.
Thanks, appreciate the information, and yeah, and there's been works trying to get things done, and Director Lee.
Yes, in addition to that, I believe that the SRD has no control over the BCOB water system because the BCOB water system has two participants on the committee, Area C and Area D. So voting by an entire board on our water system is not required. it's Edwin and I who always vote on BCOB recommendations. And further to that, the SRD has no jurisdiction over this board, and this is the board that inherited the BCOB water system, all the assets and all the liabilities. So in my opinion, this, interference by the SRD board is not very welcome by our committee. And we need to go and talk to the minister and reiterate that this is a CVRD service. The water is. The park itself is an Area D park. It's an Area D community park, and only Area D people pay for it. And I'm in favor of having the well drilled in that area. Like, it's SRD trying to insert itself into our process down here, which I find, I'm absolutely not supportive of. So just so you all know that I'm not a double agent or anything. When I'm here for the CVRD board because I'm a director on this board for BCOB services and other things. So just so you know where I stand. And Edwin and I have both supported the well project all along, provided that we can supply water from that third well without impacting the environment. That's my bottom line, is that we barely have enough water in the Oyster River at the estuary by the end of August for the fish to get up the river and for the four-legged mammals and the birds and whatnot to survive. And we can't draw that. The aquifer and the river are connected underground. And if we draw it down too far, then we're going to kill things. So I really don't want that to happen. And I'm hoping we'll have environmental, the province, the Ministry of Environment will have enough oversight to know when enough is enough on that river. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's where I stand on it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Director Lee. And just looking at the wording on this, so it's, to meet with Honourable Selena Robertson. So any further questions or comments on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. Director Lee, have a nice... Yeah. Exactly. All right, so we are back into delegations. So I'll just read off our prepared statement for delegations, basically asking the members of the committee, board, commission, and in this case, it's our board. Please welcome our delegation to today's meeting. As chair of this board, I wish to take this opportunity to clarify the role of the delegation will be to present information on their particular topic, which may require further consideration or action by this board or by staff. The role of directors here today is to listen carefully to the information presented, clarify any points needed at the end of the presentation, and except under specific circumstances, the board will not make any decisions about your presentation today. But we might ask you, or we may ask staff to investigate your matter and come back with a report at a later time. If you have any questions following your presentation today, I would ask that you contact Jake Martins, to my right, Manager of Legislative Services. If further action is required regarding your presentation, Mr. Martins will let you know. The delegations will have 10 minutes in which to make their presentation, which will be followed by questions from directors. I would remind the gallery to please refrain from applause or other expressions of emotion, so speakers do not feel intimidated. Outbursts, criticisms, or inappropriate language also will not be tolerated. I'd like to invite the delegation to start their presentation, and first it'll be Carmen Dreichel. Does that sound close? Dreichel? There you go. Carmen from Fortis, BC.
Thank you. Thank you to the chair and directors and staff for having me here today on the traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. My co-worker Georgina Wheatcroft, who works in our natural gas for transportation team, is on her way from the Lower Mainland, so she had a bit of delay on the ferry, but she will be here. So I think it's been since AVICC that I've been able to connect with a lot of you. I am the Community and Indigenous Relations Manager for Fortis. I work here on Vancouver Island and also the Sunshine Coast, Squamish and Whistler. I sort of describe my role as the bridge between our communities, our customer levels, our local governments, and the machine that is Fortis. So if you have questions, anything, I'm here on the island to help. So I think I just want to start quickly with a quick recap. I think we often get to talk to you at AVICC right before lunch on Saturday, so sometimes that's a bit tricky, but I'll just kind of quickly. Here on Vancouver Island, I think most people know us as the deliverer of natural gas to our customers, but what some people don't know is that we serve almost 1.2 million customers now with natural gas, 100% carbon neutral renewable natural gas, hydroelectricity, propane, and alternative energy in the form of solar, and looking towards hydrogen energy as well. So we have 2,200 employees and serve 135 communities. Today, I wanted to, I think at AVICC, we were able to have a few conversations about climate action, and we had a great presentation from the president of BC Ferries talking about the opportunity to take action immediately instead of waiting until technology sort of catches up to where we want to go. I wanted to introduce you to our Clean Growth Pathway. It's a document that we created as the province was moving towards the Clean BC plan. I bought a few copies in paper, and I'm also happy to provide a digital link to the document. In the document, I think as a supplier of energy across the province, we have natural gas throughout the province. We have an isolated area where we provide electricity only, and then we have this unique combined services, or we call it our shared services territory, where we serve both electricity and natural gas. So we have a unique understanding of the energy requirements of British Columbia, and I think our vision in being part of finding a solution to bring us into a future that's sustainable for us and for our kids and for future generations. Through the Clean Growth Pathway, we've really are employing the province and working with all of our levels of government to find a solution that sort of uses all of the tools in our toolbox and doesn't look, it's not going to be one silver bullet that gets us to where we need to go sustainably, affordably, long term. So through that Clean Growth Pathway, we identified that transportation is the biggest single point of emissions in BC, with commercial transportation being 25% of our provincial emissions. And so in the work that we do, we find that it's probably the easiest and largest opportunity to make an immediate impact with technology that's available today to see a significant reduction in emissions. So today, really, the urgency in coming forward and presenting to the board as representatives of different local governments in this region is to present an opportunity that's available right now specific to the Comox Valley. We wanted to talk about CNG, or compressed natural gas. And so it's available right now to our customers through our system that requires no upgrade to our infrastructure. And it's transitioning to help transition commercial transportation sector away from heavy carbon fuels like diesel to CNG. We see an immediate and significant opportunity for GHG emissions reductions. The other opportunity when we transition fleets to CNG is significant air quality improvement with very significant reductions in NOx and SOx particulate matter. The engines of these vehicles run quieter to serve our communities, and for the operators of these vehicles, we see significant cost fuel savings. So the opportunity that presents itself right now to the Comox Valley is a unique situation where we have received some funding through NRCan. And in this opportunity, FortisBC is willing to make an investment combined with funding from NRCan to build a CNG fueling station here in the Comox Valley. And when we looked at a customer base or a potential to use that fuel, we see an easy opportunity with waste haulers. I'm just going to go back one slide because this graph here that shows GHG emissions on the left column for diesel, the middle for CNG, and the far right is RCNG, or renewable natural gas used for fueling through CNG. And what I asked the team to do was to give me the numbers to specific here in the valley. So we estimate that right now, through the different local government areas, there's about 12 waste haulers serving our communities right now. And so this would be an actual GHG reduction potential for just those 12 waste haulers. So in this opportunity for a station, what we're looking at is a multi-fueling station that would be available to third-party access. So it could be available for these waste haulers, it could be available for municipal fleets, it could be available for commercial transportations like grocery, couriers. UPS is a CNG customer in the Lower Mainland. London Drugs is a customer. We have customers in the lower end of the island, like Cold Star Freight, who does grocery delivery up and down the island. They're currently using CNG fueling, and expanding a fueling opportunity here to the North Island helps them extend their services too. So what we're asking for you is to help us bring this station to the region. We understand that there's a variety of different contracts for waste hauling, and we're just asking you individually in your communities to consider putting CNG or renewable natural gas CNG as part of those waste hauling contracts as they're looking for to renew or for new contracts, and also to collaborate with us. We have a similar situation around the island where individually our local governments are small, municipal fleets are small, but collectively, and so it sometimes is not cost effective to look at a fueling station individual to one community, but regionally to serve regions here and in the CRD is very similar. I think what we're doing is reaching out to ask to collaborate between our valley communities to find an opportunity to situate a station that will serve our region and into the north. The tricky situation here is that this NRCan funding is coming up to where we need to have a decision, and we need to find a location for the station by August of this year. So our staff are here. We've reached out individually to some communities and had some great conversations. There's some that we haven't been able to connect with. So today I'm asking, that we're here to connect with staff in each of our communities to try to find a solution that will work. Here in the Valley, we want to commend the CVRD and the great working relationship we have with you on the potential project that we have at the landfill in Cumberland, the Comox Valley Waste Management Center. It's really exciting to see this project progress. We're looking forward to the next stages. I just wanted to share with you all that it's a significant project. Just that landfill alone is looking to contribute about 75,000 gigajoules of renewable natural gas to our system annually, which is about 30% of our current supply. So through the Clean BC plan, the province set out very aggressive target of increasing our supply of RNG to 15%, and your landfill that serves your communities will go a long way to do that. So congratulations, and we look forward to keep moving forward. When renewable natural gas, which is deemed 100% carbon neutral as it displaces traditional natural gas that would need to be coming into our system and taking methane that would be, that could go back to the environment, we capture it and put it into our system. If we use that in fueling our commercial fleets, we can see a reduction of GHG emissions from 90 to 115% over diesel. So here in the Valley, you have a unique opportunity. However, the CVRD and the communities decide to use that RNG from the landfill, you can see a potential for closing this loop of transportation where we have collection of waste. And as I understand, the region is looking to organics collection is another opportunity where we can look at creating this waste from energy from waste. And then actually putting it back in our system and fueling the very trucks that are going around and picking that up. So we have this great system of supporting itself, having cleaner and quieter trucks doing that work in our communities. So really, I just wanted to again thank you and say that we're here and we're ready and we look forward and we really hope that we can bring this opportunity to the Valley.
All right, thanks very much. We do have a few questions. Director Hamir.
Thank you, and thanks for such a great presentation. I think you've come at a really good time. I think the board is is looking at very aggressive ways of reducing our carbon footprint here in the Valley. So really pleased to see this presentation. So a couple of questions I had on the hauler side. What kind of changes do the actual trucks need to have in order to burn natural gas? Is it a whole brand new truck or can they be retrofitted? That's one question. And then on the RD side, you're looking for land or a letter of support. Like, could you maybe explain that a little bit more, what you're looking for from the regional district? Yeah.
Sure. Yes, and Georgina is the subject matter expert in this, so hopefully she'll come up soon to help with some of the technical information. But I think generally speaking, the trucks can be retrofitted. I understand it's the engine that burns differently. And so there are programs, and FortisBC provides a very hefty incentive program to help companies do that switch, be it buy new trucks or retrofit other trucks. The other thing that's important to know is that the waste haulers that are currently serving the valley, no CNG. They run CNG vehicles elsewhere here on Vancouver Island and in the Lower Mainland. So they're familiar with the equipment that needs to be used and that process of qualifying or working with us to get the incentives to do that. The other question about...
What do you need from the RD?
Yeah. So I think the CVRD, I understand there's a very small waste hauling contract that's managed by the CVRD. And so I think just in considering when that contract comes up for renewal to include cleaner burning CNG fuel as a requirement for the trucks that are hauling that waste, and or even maybe waiting towards companies that can provide that option as a cleaner option. And then as a CVRD board, I guess each of you in your individual communities have those waste hauling contracts as well.
Maybe, could I ask, do you have like a specific site in mind for that refilling station? And could you elaborate on where that is? Yeah.
Sure. I think there are two opportunities. When the application, my understanding is that when the application was put into NRCan, Emterra, which is a significant holder of those contracts, put in a support for a fueling station. They have a piece of land near Cumberland where they have a current site. Mm-hmm. In that application, they indicated that they would be open to allowing third-party access to that site if a station was constructed there. So it's an immediate opportunity. We don't want to influence who gets waste contracts and get in the middle of those sort of talks. So if that's not an option, if Emterra hosting that site is not an option, then I think what we're doing is reaching out to the region to say, is there collectively something that's maybe more centrally located? The other thing to look here is that transit is another opportunity for CNG. So they run transit buses and, Nanaimo's got an entire fleet. So is there an opportunity to look at a location that serves a variety of commercial trucks? So there is a site available at Emterra.
Great, thank you.
And Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Carmen, for the presentation. I got, I think, 3 questions. I'll jump in with the third one. So who might invest in the capital for this project?
The station itself?
Yeah, the station itself.
If, with, I think, a commitment of the hauling fleet, the whole station would be built, FortisBC, and the funding from NRCan would fund the construction of the station, and then the piece of land, I guess, the promise, be it a long-term lease or Emterra is offering their piece of property for the land, that would be separate to it. Mm-hmm. But as far as the infrastructure on the station, that would be an investment FortisBC and NRCan funding.
Okay.
The other thing I just want to add in about the stations is that they would provide an immediate opportunity for CNG fueling, but the vision for these is to be a multi-fueling hub, which I think I said, but what that means is we're looking to provide future opportunity for hydrogen fueling there and EV fast charge so that you could have a third-party open station that provides all those options to the public.
Sure, and that was one of my questions, was about the fast charge station.
Yeah.
So the final one is about carbon neutral natural gas, and you mentioned solid waste, and you mentioned compost. Are there other sources?
Yeah, wastewater treatment is another opportunity, and agriculture, are two. Yeah, we have a really exciting project that we're just starting to work with, just lower mid-island. Mm-hmm. That's it's 4 dairy farms and some kitchen organics, and it's phenomenal, the amount of energy we can make from that very small supply.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Director Grieve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, when we talk about just regular natural gas, of course, we're talking about stuff that comes from 1,000 kilometers away on a pipeline that apparently was damaged, and on Vancouver Island we were asked to use less, not more, natural gas because of that fact. Now, you mentioned a few sources for renewable natural gas, mm-hmm. And I think that on Vancouver Island, sometimes we get suckered into thinking like we're on the prairies or something. We have, of course, you mentioned, biosolids, you mentioned municipal solid waste, you mentioned organics, kitchen scraps and what have you. But we live in an area where we have forests and forest companies that leave enormous amounts of biosolids in the woods. So I know it's a big piece, but have you ever looked into using that in an anaerobic digester situation? You talk 15%. You're looking for renewables now. I think it's gone up from what it was a couple of years ago. I think
Absolutely.
so. It's very ambitious, but. You probably heard this story from my good friend Charlie Cornfield from north of the Oyster about using the pressure vessels at the old pulp mill to use all that waste. And we have, I know it's a bit of a jump and it's a huge capital investment, but we've got right now we're trying to cut back on the amount of burning that goes on for land clearing and forestry use.
Yeah.
If we could grind that stuff all up and cook it and turn it into renewables, I mean, that I see as the future. It takes us off dependency on fracking and Alberta and everything else. So
Yeah.
I just want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up because it definitely is a conversation that I've been having amongst local governments here on Vancouver Island. I mean, sustainability, I think, for island communities is important, probably more than some of our other communities in the interior where you have better access to everything. But yes, that's a huge opportunity. And we have the pulp mill in Campbell River. We also have a pulp mill in Port Alice that's has the anaerobic digester capacity to do that. And so it's something that I work very closely with our teams in the renewable natural gas side. And we have an opportunity, I think, with education and everything to provide how do we get to use these facilities to make energy. With our ability to move gas in different ways through compression and liquid, I think that counting out remote locations like Port Alice is not even a problem anymore. So I think there is an opportunity for huge growth in looking at wood waste.
Do you see Fortis working on a business case for that?
I definitely see our teams looking towards that in conjunction with education systems and our local governments for sure. I think FAIA that's a big piece that they're working at. The Vancouver Island Economic Alliance is looking at wood waste too. And so we have a great collaborative opportunity to bring all of the minds together to create an opportunity for sure.
Well, that's encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Director Kettler.
Yeah, just on the topic of wood waste, I know that they're considering a pilot for southern Vancouver Island, and currently it includes Denman and Hornby, but not the rest of Area A. Kind of stops really at Comox Valley, but includes most of southern Vancouver Island, where they are looking at not burning slash piles anymore, but doing other things with that wood waste, and trying to benefit businesses and having business-to-business relationships. And so hopefully that pilot does go through. I was looking at the proposal just the other day, and the Village of Cumberland did put in a request that the Comox Valley be included in that pilot, but we'll see where that goes. But I just wanted to say that, that natural gas can be contentious, but I think with the way that your company is moving toward renewables, and there's so many opportunities just within that renewables, but also the other green energy projects that you've talked about, solar and whatnot. I think that's exactly what we need. Like you said, there's no silver bullet that's going to solve everything going into this climate crisis, but a variety of solutions, which is great to see that your company is leading on that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that, we're here, right, so to collaborate. So let's connect with the bridge and bring together the voices and the people and the knowledge, and let's work towards that with those wood waste solutions. I think too, our, pipeline is a tricky word these days, and sometimes people dance around saying it. I was at Victoria City Council, and somebody was talking about the next person up, and they said the next in the pipeline, and people cringed. And the reality is our network is a multi-billion-dollar asset serving this province right now, and it's through it, and it's through innovations that companies like Fortis are willing to make, that we bring RNG as an opportunity to our customers. Without it, we couldn't get it to you. And so how do we use these systems to then bring nitrogen and RNG and then rely less on the natural gas that's traditionally? So yeah, innovation is the way that we'll get there. Georgina, my coworker, has just arrived, so if there is any other more technical questions on the transportation side, she's here and available after for questions.
Excellent. And thanks to Director Arbor, who did give notice in his regrets, but he's arrived here, so we can start. But you talk about words, when you said the word bridge a little while ago, I saw some people from Courtney cringe a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So, it cuts both ways for sure. Director Swift.
Thank you. I'm just curious about how much land you need and what would one of these fueling stations look like. So could you describe it a little bit more?
Sure. I wish I had brought a picture. We have a station like this right outside my office in Langford, our Langford Operations Center, and they're not very big. Georgina, the footprint for the fueling station is what, like 40 feet by 60 feet? And then you just need the turnaround lanes for the vehicles that are using it. So the infrastructure itself is not very big, then just some space for moving the traffic around it. Our station in Langford, Cold Star Freight fuels all of their trucks there, and they come in the morning, they fuel, and we hardly notice them. And we're in a busy parking lot with Quality Foods and other retail locations around us. So they're very user-friendly.
And it might be worthwhile if you're able to send those emails to Jake or somebody, and then that can get disseminated, just so we have that visual.
Yep.
That'd be awesome.
For sure.
Director Frisch.
Yeah, quick follow-up. So I see the benefits of natural gas with the cleaner burning over diesel, certainly lower carbon emissions. I guess what I wanted to ask you, a little no stone unturned question, but and I might have asked you before. What is the long-term viability, as Fortis sees it, of non-renewable natural gas? Is this a forever product?
Traditional natural gas? I think it's a really multi-fold question, and I think that there's the projections are very long-term for supply, and I think that where traditional natural gas can play a role is, we're really great, I think, here in BC in looking at what we do here and how we take care of our communities and what we can do to do better. The reality is that when we look at our big emissions, we are a fraction of drops in the bucket when we look at the globe. And so I think that, and it's a testy conversation too, but our traditional natural gas, the reality is it provides tremendous global opportunity to reduce emissions, especially in the marine transportation industry, where our natural gas used as LNG to get those ships burning really horrible fuels provides an amazing opportunity. So I think that regionally it's something that we agree, right? Electricity and how we use renewables to support us here in BC. But that source will provide a big opportunity globally.
So you're not just talking diesel on a global scale, you're talking bunker fuel and coal and all the rest.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for the answer.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Director Morin.
Great, thanks, Chair. Hi, thank you for the presentation. Well, economic development's really big on our minds today. We have another presentation later, so I'm wondering if you could give some, any information about opportunities for job creation, economic development to do with this, and maybe spin-offs from this potential.
Yeah. Well, I think that in the transportation industry, one huge benefit that it gives is cost effectiveness. So it allows those companies to operate more robustly. At AVICC, we gave a presentation sort of talking about energy, and Sundance Topham from Cumberland presented a really, I think, inspiring opportunity that Cumberland is looking at. They're physically adjacent to the landfill and an opportunity for RNG production. And instead of however that's going to sort out in where the RNG actually goes, in thinking about it conceptually as they're developing economic plans for industrial development, you're like in producing renewable energy here, we can be really proud of it. And then looking at what are the industries that also support, or what are the industries that's an important piece to their development too. And there are lots of companies that it's a big deal to, right? With transportation companies traveling or transit or bringing our food and all of our products are committing to greener and cleaner fuels. So it provides, we're seeing already an opportunity to kind of engage different sectors. That, like the cannabis industry requires a lot of energy to run a lot of those operations. And if they can be burning clean energy to do that, awesome.
Excellent. And Director Hamir.
Thanks. This is actually a question for staff. I was going to ask, our contracts with our haulers, is there any kind of provisions for asking questions around the types of fuels that they use, and if that can be included? And when is the contract renewal up? Like, do you have an idea when we negotiate those?
Mr. Chair and Directors, to answer the question, our influence is modest because our hauling is so small. It's just a portion of the rural areas, but nonetheless, we can, when that is renewed, look at those conditions. We can look at to see whether the market is favorable for that at that time. It is the municipalities that will have the biggest influence on this. Each one of the 3 municipalities currently contracts individually. Pooling those resources and doing it as one is an opportunity, and or just as individuals, but ensuring that they have consistent conditions in their renewals. And I think the 3 municipalities are lining up to renew those contracts fairly soon. So there is a good opportunity. It's my understanding they may also be in discussions with Campbell River as well, another partner when it comes to solid waste. As for when our contract is up, I'm not sure. Our experts aren't here today on solid waste, but I'll get back to you on that.
If I could ask a
Oh, yeah.
would it be possible for staff then to to actually have those conversations with Courtney and Comox and Cumberland staff and report back to us as to what the results are of pooling our ask around natural gas in hauling of waste?
Sure, and that's something I'll ask about where it's at. I think they're having those conversations already, and we'll see where they're at. Yep.
And so I guess the expectation would be that there may be a report or a verbal kind of report or something coming back at a future meeting. Sure. That's fair. Director Frisch.
Well, with the fairly tight timeline, I wonder if you'll be presenting to the municipalities to get our ears perked to the idea at those tables as well.
Yeah, I think we're open to that. We've reached out at a staff level, and if you think that it's valuable for us to come and give a similar presentation in front of council.
Well, yeah, just making the comment, it's either the board takes the leadership role to bring them together, or you do it. So I don't know. What do you think, Chair?
Well, I think certainly having a report come back kind of sends a bit of a signal, but also if you're able to talk to each, because there's a lot of elected officials who aren't here.
Yeah.
So being a delegation at each of the other municipalities, I certainly see value in that for sure, as Director Frisch I think does. So I would definitely recommend that you contact each of the municipalities to be a delegation, just so that this information, most of the information that happens here stays here.
Okay.
It's kind of like Vegas.
Okay.
But if you're in Comox, Courtney, Cumberland, those meetings are actually videoed. They go up on the internet. There's newspaper reporters, et cetera. So you may get, getting this information out beyond here, but specifically with those other elected officials to show that there is political will for something like this. So. Is that kind of?
That is, and I just wanted to follow up with the staff maybe. Is this something that's on our radar, or do you need direction if we want to pick this up and run with it? And yeah.
I think it's already on the radar of your staff. Yep.
Fair enough. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thanks. Director Grant.
Arnott.
You're not.
Yeah, no.
Alternate Director Arnott. Sorry. Sorry about that.
World,
Mayor.
Yeah. Being mindful, Carmen, of your time frame of August you need. I know, speaking for Comox, that things start to slow down July, and if you're looking for a delegation, it might be tight. And I'm guessing, I can't speak for all of council because they're not here, that would probably be something that Director Grant would put his hands up, or Councillor Grant would put his hands up and say, why don't we refer this to the regional district, because it's a regional service. So it probably would wind up coming back here anyway. But of course, you're always welcome to come to Comox, but I'm just being mindful of your time frame and our schedule over the summer.
We would never refuse an invitation to present to council.
Yeah, well, get a hold of us and see if we can get you in before the August deadline.
Yeah, I'll work with staff to continue to do that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the fine point is if you're waiting for an invitation, it may not come.
Yeah. Not reading.
So if it's something you want to do, yeah, I mean, literally Google Courtney delegation and there's a
Yeah.
webpage. Comox, I think, is the same, and
Yeah.
same with Cumberland. So
In there, yeah.
I don't see any other things here. I guess one of the things I only wrote down to get a report on municipalities working together, so it sounds like that's good. There was a comment on there about the 75,000 gigajoules or whatever that number was on a previous slide being about 30% of our current supply. And I'm wondering, when you say, like when I see approximately 30% of our current supply, I'm thinking that can't be for the province. Are we talking just the Comox Valley, or what's that 30% referring to?
Yeah, no, it is our current supply in the province. We currently have approximately 4 facilities producing RNG, and right now they're at about 250,000 gigajoules of production, and so
Wow.
we have the benefit of Fortis has been investing in this process from the inception for 11, 12 years now, and so we've seen also a tremendous increase in technology allowing us to reap more energy from the sources. And so in the project that we're working on with the CVRD, production in this 75,000 of 250,000, it's significant.
Wow.
The
Okay.
farm agricultural, 100,000 GJs, right? Like, I think sometimes people have counted RNG out because it's like it's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
Like it's not enough. We're getting there, right? And together we
Yeah.
can get there. Where there are people, there is waste.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, and from a messaging standpoint, because like when you talk about LNG in general and you talk about how it's procured, often that has a lot of baggage that comes along with
For
it.
sure.
I mean, getting this message out, I think, is, and obviously that's what you're here to do, but like, yeah, I just want to, I was not expecting 30% of the province. Now, when we talk about the usage then, because that talks about the supply, so what about the actual usage that gets used within the province to get a better sense of that piece of the pie?
yeah, I think we currently have about 11,000 customers using RNG. All of our customers our residential customers can go online, and on your bill you can elect to buy a portion of or up to 100% RNG. And then our larger commercial customers, we have, contracts and agreements with them for allocating the RNG to them. It's at about 11,000 now and growing.
Okay, and so I guess so that kind of answers my question, but what I'm looking at is like 20 years from now or 30 years from now, do we, especially given what you're talking about in terms of some of the other things is, and I don't know if I'm getting lost in say RNG versus, because what I'm looking at is the RNG versus LNG, if that makes sense. So so there's like the traditional one.
Mm-hmm.
So is there an opportunity 20 years, 50 years down the road where natural gas is basically just RNG, that there is no like all the bad stuff that sometimes happens to get the regular LNG?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I think what our commitment is and our projects that we're working on right now is, in addition to traditionally what we've looked at as RNG through wastewater treatment, agriculture, food scraps, and landfill, looking at hydrogen and how our system can be used. You can create hydrogen through hydroelectricity generation, and so injecting hydrogen into our system hydrogen is a renewable energy as well. So every bit of waste we can turn to energy, and then now looking at hydrogen and how we can put it into our system to also then be another volume to displace traditional natural gas.
Thanks. And my last question, which you may not be able to answer, is you talked about a premium, or it sounded like it was a premium where people would choose RNG. So do you know what that difference in cost is?
I have a slide I can get to you.
Okay.
Renewable natural gas is a little bit more than traditional natural gas in cost. On a residential home heating basis, it's less than Tier 1 or Tier 2 hydro cost-wise. And then commercial customers on a large consumption basis, also we work out a different pricing in there.
But it's hard, there's too big of a matrix to really say it's 10% more or 5% more.
Do you know that number? I can look and I can get it for you by the end of this meeting.
All right, and
It's about $10 a GJ versus, depending on where it's trending, about $3, $4. But with the carbon, the LCF credits, you're actually paying less than regular CNG if you're using RNG. credits that you can monetize,
Yeah.
you actually are paying less.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Sorry
just
to get into a little bit of the weeds there, but
That's okay.
we do have Director Grieve.
Very quickly, just a little backgrounder. A lot of people don't know that we did at one time go to the public for a valley-wide contract in the electoral areas for garbage hauling. And it was going to also include weekly recycling pickup and all that. And it was soundly defeated at referendum. That was about 7 years ago. Now I'm thinking, you know, here we are facing a collection of organics coming up. And of course, if you frame it with this renewable conversation, I think that the public probably has moved on, and it would be a possibility that we could maybe revisit this and come up with something. As it was, the one contract we do have is for Royston, and they went for it, and they also got the Recycle BC on board, and they're paying about 1/3 of the rest of the valley with their private hauling contracts. So the numbers were there, but we just couldn't convince the people. But now with this, framing it with this and collection of organics, I think maybe we stand a chance.
Yeah, technology's come a long way to support, you know, that big picture, for sure.
Excellent. And I just want to say I don't see any further questions. Thanks so much, Carmen, for the information today, and look forward to the maybe a photo or whatever. But thanks again.
Yep, great. Thank you.
Did we receive?
Sure. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Excellent. Next up, we have Curtis Road Residents Association with Jenny Steele. Somebody wants to move that? Excellent. And Jenny, if you'd like to come up.
Sure. There you go. Mr. Clicker. Oh, thanks, Russell. I've got a bit of a cold, so you'll just have to bear with me if I go into a coughing fit here. Anyways, good afternoon, directors. Thank you for receiving our delegation. My name's Jenny Steele, and I represent the 85 members of the Curtis Road Residents Association. We're here today to formally ask, through an amendment to Bylaw 650, for a permanent restricted voting seat on the Sewage Commission for Electoral Area B. Although we don't participate in the service, much of the sewage treatment infrastructure lies within Area B. Living next to the plant over the last 35 years has hugely impacted our quality of life, not just the odours, but also the visual stigma and the noise and the impact on our property values. Right now, the only way for us to communicate with decision makers, the Sewage Commission, is through delegations and correspondence, and that plainly is not working. We're not asking for the world. In 1982, this board delegated operation and maintenance powers to the Commission through Bylaw 650, as shown in this list. Our proposal is that Commission membership would be limited to the selection and procurement of operating equipment, item D, that may affect odour, noise, visual stigma, and groundwater where we live in Area B. This could be an interim measure, pending results of the governance study, which is likely, from what we can see, to be a multi-year endeavour. Under the provisions of the Local Government Act, commissioners can be given full, limited, or no voting rights. The Act is flexible. The Act does specify, however, that only the Regional District Board can establish the membership and voting rules of a commission. Board voting rules for this change are 2/3 of the votes cast. As the Ministry of Municipal Affairs confirmed to us, it is for the board to determine what it considers to be the most appropriate balance in operating a service for participants and representing those who do not participate but are affected. This puts our request for representation squarely on this board's shoulders. We need somebody at the table protecting our interests. As we said earlier, odour, visual and noise stigmas from the plant impact our quality of life. They constitute legal nuisance and affect our property values. There's been 35 years of odour problems from a plant that you had promised would not generate odours. We need someone at the table so we can see plans in advance and ask questions. Right now, decisions are not known until plans are well advanced. For example, 2 years ago, CVRD and the Sewage Commission approved odor control upgrades, knowing that they would only solve 80% of the problem. Staff said recently that they hoped that the changes would stop the complaints. They didn't. As another example, we were briefed only on March 7th about a half-acre open primary effluent basin that will be going into the buffer zone, less than 60 meters behind some homes. On March 21st, swaths of the buffer zone trees between us and the plant were removed. The visual stigma is brutal, and likely our house prices are impacted. Moreover, we recently, very recently, found out through an access to information request that Associated Engineering in January this year warned that the basin could potentially result in even more odor issues in our community. They had suggested covering it. Representation through delegation and correspondent is inefficient and frustrating. Currently, we are relegated to these 10-minute presentations where we're not allowed to either ask questions, engage in any discussion, explore solutions, or correct inaccurate or misrepresentative statements. While we are disenfranchised, D&D holds a tie-breaking commission vote on projects that affect our lives. That is not democratic. There are a number of short, medium, and long-term projects coming up that potentially impact us. In the short term, we have bioreactor controls, odor modeling studies, the EQ Basin project, odor standards, a good neighbor agreement, communications protocol, and host community compensation. We also have the governance study and the liquid waste management plan. While we have a couple of reps on the PAC for the LWMP, we have no representative on that project steering committee. Added to that are plant expansions plans for 24, 31, the force main replacement, and the outfall pipe replacement, all in our area. We need to have a voice and vote on decisions if these projects impact odor, noise, visual stigma, and well water. What we've heard against this representation so far, that we need to pay to play. We do pay, but in different ways. We contribute through reduced quality of life and reduced property values. We contribute through our federal and provincial taxes. Of the 31 million paid for plant construction, D&D contributed around 4, and 75% of the balance was paid through a provincial sewage program grant. We also contribute through our septage fees. We heard objections that this would set a precedent. We couldn't find any other place in the province where the sewage treatment plant is not located in a participating area. Our situation is unique. Further, other commissions do have non-participating members. For example, the Capital Regional District's Project Board for Sewer Services. Then we've heard, let's wait for the Utilities Governance Review. The 2018 consultant report took the 30,000-foot view, presenting options but not offering recommendations for major governance overhauls, such as forming a corporation to run water and sewer services. In their May 2019 update, staff put forth a plan whereby Comox and Courtney engineers would, this month and next, formulate some recommendations for presentation back to the Commission in November. Area B is not involved in these discussions. The update suggested the likely recommendation would be to address each utility separately. Clearly, this project is not going to produce any concrete recommendations for change anytime soon. Some claim that the status quo works well, that Area B has a voice that is heard loud and clear. We would contend that this is the case only because of the extraordinary effort we have had to make and because of support from the press. Again, I think we had a nice little cartoon in today's paper again about Curtis Road. Again, the status quo is one way and inefficient. Our association should not have to read every report and follow every project. We really don't want to know so much about sewage treatment, but the status quo leaves us no choice. Our association doesn't represent all of Area B, nor all of the plant neighbours. The onus should not be on a neighbourhood association. The status quo brings stress for both sides, lots of work and bad press. We have an elected official who's willing and able to represent our community and who should be given the opportunity to represent her constituents. Finally, a fear that electoral Area B issues will dominate the agenda. If the chronic problems were fixed and ground rules such as a good neighbour policy and representation put in place, then this would be unlikely. The Sewage Commission is currently dealing with the backlash of 35 years of foot dragging, penny pinching and callous indifference to plant neighbours. We've had enough, and we're very determined to make lasting changes. We will keep pushing. Arguments for a seat. We believe having a seat at the table will bring the following benefits for everyone. Firstly, if problems and impacts to Area B are exposed earlier in a project's life cycle, then that will lead to better and more efficient decision making. Our representative would be able to spot impacts up front rather than have messy issues and public relations nightmares to deal with down the road. Commission efficiency would be improved with a single interface through the director to the various associations in Area B. We think that it's the democratic thing to do. The status quo where Area B is disenfranchised is patently unfair and obviously not working. Support for a seat would help establish trust and help build the good neighbour relationship that regional staff and the Commission say they want to build. This costs the board nothing and the Commission nothing and allows us to get on with our lives. All these delegations, access to information requests, letters and reports take lots of work, and I'd rather be enjoying my retirement, thank you. What do you have to lose? If it's not working out, then the decision can be easily revisited under the governance study or reviewed, say, on a biannual basis. Consider it a pilot project for the next 2 or 3 years. We believe this is a balanced, democratic and fair approach, which respects the needs of Courtenay and Comox councillors to be accountable to your constituents and also respects our right to democratic representation on issues that hugely affect our lives. We hope you can help us mend fences and put an end to this 35-year problem. Thank you for your consideration.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And that was right at 10 minutes, so that was good. Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jenny, for the presentation once again. I mean, I don't have any questions. I've heard.
You've heard it all before.
I've heard it all
You're
before.
the chair of the commission.
I'll give the next presentation. Then, but I did want to share some stuff with the board.
Sure.
I have the pleasure of serving on the commission. So, first of all, of course, we understand that there are significant impacts to the people of Curtis Road, and as it's in the press, I'm sure most people are. I think the Curtis Road delegations are in fact working. I've spent a lot of time on it. I know staff have spent a lot of time on addressing some of the issues you bring forward, most of them I would say. And in my view, I think the Curtis Road Residents Association has the attention of the Sewage Commission, and two of our recent resolutions are to address some of the issues. One of them was with the odor control standard that we're investigating, and the second one is the report back on future opportunities to reduce odors at the plant. So I want the board to know that. We did hold a vote, which you outlined in your presentation, to provide a non-voting position for the Area B director, and unfortunately it did not pass. So I would recommend at this point, I know it's a little early, you haven't had discussion, but I would recommend that staff do bring us a report on the ability for us as a board to supersede the decision of the commission before we move forward on this. But I just wanted to share that with the board, and thanks again.
Okay.
All right, and Director Kettler.
Well, I haven't heard it all before, and I think that was a very good argument. It does sound like you are, as Curtis Road residents, paying a considerable cost and not being represented. Can you bring up the slide again, you had a suggestion about how that representation might play out as far as what was originally set out with the Sewage Commission.
Sure. That would be slide, you got a clicker there, Bill? This one, slide 3. Oh, sorry, I've got the clicker. Sorry. Oh, there we go.
So is your suggestion that if you were to have any voting rights, that it would be just the selection of procurement and operating equipment that you would be able to vote on? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's absolutely correct. And also restricted to those items that affect odor, noise, visual, and potentially groundwater in our area.
Okay, and then I would ask staff then, how would you see something like that playing out as I know that we do have a fee for service kind of relationship with the commission, and how would you see them having voting rights in a very narrow manner as they've suggested?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I'll just refer to Jake Martins, and he can provide a response.
So the board holds the legislative authority with respect to the bylaw number 650, and it's been determined that essentially bylaw 650 concerns the administration and operation of the service, and so it would be a vote of only the participating members to provide direction to staff to bring forward an amending bylaw. Certainly, if the board has a specific interest in either honoring the request or providing the specifics around the nature of their participation or the specific topics, it'd be certainly I'd look for that specificity in the resolution so that we can bring forward an amending bylaw if it were to be endorsed that meets that interest.
Thank you.
Okay, and Director Hamir.
Right. So another question, just staff, if you could just clarify, then a motion like that would have to be coming from the participating members of the commission, or could it be coming from anyone from the board?
Through the chair, so any member may put forward a motion and it can be seconded. However, only those that are the participating members can vote on that motion then.
Okay, and so just a subsequent, if that's okay. So this board has the ability to amend bylaw 650, which basically is how the sewage commission is, like the constituents of that sewage commission. So, I mean, it obviously doesn't go into the day-to-day operations of the commission, but just the makeup of that board, or that commission, I should say.
Yeah, so we view it as sort of the commission. It's the commission bylaw essentially, and it provides for essentially the framework for the commission. I think the important distinction is where there's a decision concerning the administrative affairs of the commission. That's something that we would deem to be then certainly a participant decision that should be made in some cases at the commission table. But given that we're discussing here an amendment to a bylaw, that would be a decision for them to be made at this board table.
Okay. Well, if I could have another subsequent. You know, I think the presentation by the Curtis Road Residents Association, and I've heard the other ones at the Sewage Commission. For those of you who haven't heard it, I think they've very much painted out what the situation is and the frustrations of the area. And so I would, you know, sort of plead to my other directors on the board here that if anything, you know, the frustrations and the inability for them to have a seat at the table to counter some of the and to bring forward issues on their behalf has been really difficult. Like, they've just done amazing yeoman's work on this issue, and I have to commend them for just their dogged determination to get this done. And so, you know, I would plead that if this board would feel comfortable doing so, that an amendment be made sooner than later. I mean, I'm sure they're not really pleased at having to delegate so often. And I'm sure, you know, you've heard them for those of you who are on the Sewage Commission many times. And just to speed up some of the process, I would actually prefer one of it not come from me. I would like to see that support. Obviously, I would support a motion in that direction, but yeah, it would be nice to have that support from the rest of the board. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Director Morin.
Great, thanks, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I wondered if you could give some examples about the property values. I mean, we hear about the impact that seems maybe abstract to many people in terms of the odor and, you know, what you're experiencing. But I'm wondering if you have some examples of actual money lost to you in terms of appraisals or houses that have been sold that are not at market value of other. I'm just wondering if you could flesh that out a little bit.
I can't at this point. What we're planning on doing is engaging in a professional appraiser from Victoria to actually come in and give us a formal appraisal of how much this is affecting our property values. I know when we took when the Curtis Road went through the lawsuit in '92, there was an appraiser came in and residents were awarded, I think it was something like 25% of their home values for 5 years, which was like how long it was supposed to take to get the odor fixed, which of course it never was. But so that's what we're planning on do. Yeah, we have people anecdotes. Some person tried to put their house, their lot up for sale. First question asked is what about the smell? So
right.
You just got to look in the newspapers. You know, there's a stigma of living on Curtis Road, and so no, we don't know exactly what it is, but we're trying to find out. And we will be bringing that back to this board.
So I was just curious whether you had anything
you're right.
concrete. And I'm not saying that what you're saying isn't true. I just wondered if you had anything.
No, we don't.
Okay.
There's never too many properties up for sale. A lot of them actually, that's the other problem. A lot of them are held in families, you know, and they're passed on by generation. So in an effort to kind of hone in on what that impact is, as I say, we're looking to hire somebody out of Victoria to do an appraisal.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And alternate Director Arnott.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny, for your report there. Sitting on the Sewage Commission, we hear more information than this board hears, and we take that information and we discuss it fully. In fact, I know we went in camera, and I'm not going to say what we went in camera about, but it was some discussions that we're waiting for information back for. That helps us make further decisions that, yeah, this board isn't aware of. We're tasked with taking the information and making a recommendation. In this correspondence that we recently have, that the CVRD board has delegated the administration and operation of the service to the Sewage Commission, and this provides for the Commission's independent action within the policy and legal framework. So we're doing what's asked. I think it would be a disservice to overrule the Sewage Commission. And I don't deny that there is a smell down there. I have very good friends that live down there, and there is a smell. There's been a smell down there for a long time. A lot of people haven't lived there a long time. As Director Frisch would say, as he said, we have heard you loud and clear. We are taking your message very seriously. I've offered to meet with the residents. You and I have met for coffee. I'll continue with that offer and bring your message to the forefront to this board. But I think by taking away a legitimate vote that commission had would not bode well for the relationships that we currently have within the political realm here. And I think that, you know, this board needs to take the information they've heard from the commission and, you know, work with that. So.
Am I allowed to speak?
You can respond, absolutely.
Okay. We don't want to have to do this forever. It seems that every time we need to put something in place that will last and be durable. Yes, I agree. You've heard us this time. But what about in 2024, when you put in more equipment and you don't cover it? What about in 2031? We need to put something in place that is enduring forever. So we don't have to keep coming back and going through situations like this in another 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. From our perspective, having a seat on this on the commission, and also putting in place something like a good neighbour policy, so we all know what the groundwork, what the ground rules are, would go a long way to doing that. We should not have to do what we are doing.
Yeah, thank you, and I agree with you 100%. But what you're talking about is 2020 and beyond, but yet we're talking maybe for the next 6 months. So I'm a little confused there. Are we talking 6 months? Are we talking beyond? You are being heard, and you don't have to come to these meetings. We will bring the information to you. I will bring it to your front door, and I'll bring your information back to the board. I'm offering that. I don't think we're trying to hide anything. I don't think the regional district has ever tried to hide anything. There's a process, they're working through it. Was there mistakes made in the past? Yes, I'm guessing there was. But we already are recommending some of the recommendations that were put out. We're saying, yes, let's go forward with that.
As I say, we'd like to put something in place that's enduring. We'd like not to be sitting at a table with our mouths closed. We need a representative who can challenge staff reports, who can challenge and join in the discussion on our behalf. We've had enough.
All right, and Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I serve on the Sewage Commission as one of Courtney's representatives, and did propose at that commission that the Area B representative be given voice but not vote until such time as the governance study had resolved this and other issues. That motion was defeated. We've had a fair amount of correspondence in recent days from staff Martins outlining some of the things that have been discussed here tonight, and I just want to clarify my understanding, which is that this board can, in fact, vote to change the bylaw in terms of representation on the Sewage Commission, correct?
Through the chair, yes. So the board can direct staff to bring forward an amending bylaw and then vote on the readings of that bylaw.
Right, but the only people who can vote, though, are the directors of Courtney and Comox, who, in fact, pay into this service.
With respect to bylaw 650, yes, that's correct. And I would just add the one distinction is that if the directors are seeking to pass a resolution similar in which was considered by the Sewage Commission, I would encourage that matter to be considered at the Sewage Commission table, as that's certainly an administrative policy decision that is best considered there as opposed to at the board table. But with respect to the bylaw, this is the appropriate venue for that.
Right, and that's why Curtis Road residents are coming here tonight with this request. Yes. So one other thing I want to clarify, the voting strength is different at the two tables, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So, obviously, we don't know how people would intend to vote if a resolution was proposed, but I take Director Arnott's point that overturning the commission on this particular vote does create a dynamic that I see as somewhat problematic. I would really like us to find a compromise on this issue. I actually thought my resolution at the Sewage Commission was a compromise, but turned out not to be so. The other question I wanted to ask, normally when we have a delegation, we don't take action on the issue on that particular night. So I believe it would take, what, a 2/3 vote to change that tonight?
Sorry.
That's correct, in which all directors would vote and 2/3 support is required in order to take immediate action.
So Director Frisch earlier on and maybe somebody else suggested that perhaps some type of staff report could come forward that might help further in the resolution of this. I'm interested in staff's opinion about whether there might be some help provided through that. I think at the very least, a staff report would outline the matters that have been shared in correspondence in recent days, which perhaps all directors haven't read in a focused way with regards to how the different voting structures work and who has control over what. So I do wonder if that type of staff report might help.
I can comment?
Could I speak?
If I could comment, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
As the chair indicated in his statement in advance of the delegations, asking for a staff report would be the thing to do to bring forward information. I think that the delegation has done a lot of research and provided a lot of information to give it value, and rather than just hang on one thing that staff has provided in terms of information tonight, let's give a fulsome review and describe to you just the authority of the commission, the delegation, and who would be voting on such matters. So, by all means, if rather than do nothing, give the delegation credit for what they've advanced, and ask staff to come back with a more fulsome report and response for your options.
I would like to say something, if I may.
Just one second. I was just going to say, looking at those options and implications. Now, generally, I think if you're answering a question, it's one thing. But what's your comment? Let's see.
Well, there is a point of legal contention as to what the vote structure is. The Local Government Act, Section 214C, says that the delegation of board power, duty, or function is two-thirds of votes cast, not just those that are participating areas. I believe that a clarification is required from the Minister of Municipal Affairs on that point of law.
And I'll just say this, that Jake is very thorough in his investigations and analysis on this, including reviewing the matter with our legal counsel, and that can be part of our staff report coming back to you.
Yeah, I think it's problematic to do this on the fly, and I'm going to move that we request a staff report on the Curtis Road delegation request.
Yeah, we can do that after receipt.
After receipt. Well,
but,
intent of that motion then.
No, thanks very much for that, and I'll a second to, oh, that was quick. Wow, that was really just a second. Some bullets being sorted out up here. The technology has done well. So, sorry, I just was about putting somebody on, and they've been lost in the system. So who had their mics on for a question? It was Director Arbour, and then I believe Director Swift will be directly after that. So Director Arbour?
I think some of the points have been covered, but I just, for the sake, for those who are not on the Switch Commission and who are CVRD board members, just a reminder that to Director Arnott's comments, we actually do have access to all the in-camera agendas and content. So some of us have followed the issue quite closely and attended every meeting. So just for those who want to get up to speed, like Director Kettler mentioned, you definitely have access to all the information.
Thanks very much. And Director Swift.
Hi. Thank you, Jenny. I hope you appreciate that I do believe that the Sewage Commission is sympathetic to your concerns. But having said that, you've referenced the good neighbor policy, and I'm just wondering what do you see that looking like?
Oh, let me get your mic back on. Sorry.
It would be a very simple document that just basically is a contract between us that says, hey, we're neighbors, here's the ground rules, here's the odor unit standard, you're not going to eat into the buffer zone anymore, you're going to maintain it, maintain the visual, so that we don't have to look at the plant. Just basic stuff, just half a dozen basic elements that we can agree upon and work from, so we all know what the ground rules are.
Thanks very much. I don't see any further questions, so I'll take a vote on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. And Director Hillian, you had a...
I'll move that we request a staff report on the subject of the Curtis Road delegation tonight.
Excellent. Any questions or comments based on that? Looking to staff, is that enough? Excellent. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jenny. I really appreciate it. And we are going to move on now. We got lots to get through. That one first.
Move F2.
F2. Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Was there a recommendation? Sorry, we're on F2. You came late. It's all good. Excellent. Any questions on F3, Electoral Area Service Committee minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes.
Move on.
Excellent. And I'll move it over to staff.
Yeah, just for the benefit of those that may be watching the meeting on video, if you don't mind just expressing the topic of your motion will be helpful. And recommendation 1, just to advise, is a development variance permit to increase the maximum permitted height for an accessory building within Hudson Road area.
All right, thanks very much. And I do have some questions, Director Frisch.
Well, and I apologize. I was opening my computer when you guys glossed over the IRTSC. I don't know what's going on, but maybe I could have a comment when you're done this item.
Sure. Okay. Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. Unless I missed it, I don't know if there's been formal recognition at the table here that the proceedings are being videoed. Did I miss that?
So months ago, we commented that the cameras were there, but they were, they're, at this point, as far as I know, they're not necessarily being, are they being uploaded to they're being uploaded?
Just not streamed live.
Yeah. But we discussed it, I can't remember when. Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm a little more sensitive to it than usual today with my not having my best side to present to the camera. So
excellent. All right. Well, and we can always switch you with Director Arbor or Arnott or someone. Yeah, some of us might not heal from some of the issues that we have. And with the camera right there and the lighting and the glare, who knows? So no real comments regarding the actual recommendation at hand. So I'm going to call a vote. And I'm just going to go through all these recommendations and we'll come back to your comment, Director Frisch. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. Next we have recommendation 2. Can you explain what 2 is?
We approve the development variance permit to increase maximum height from 6 meters to 7 meters for a property on Cloudcroft Road.
Excellent. All right, and then there's and finally.
And finally, that the corporate legislative officer be authorized to execute the permit.
Excellent, thanks very much. Somebody would like to second that? Second. Excellent, thanks very much. And any questions regarding this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And recommendation 3.
Or deny the application to rezone a property on Forbidden Plateau Road, which would have enabled a subdivision to create 4 hectare parcels.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for seconding that. And I do see, did you want to speak to that at all, Director Hamir? Okay. Director Grieve?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not be supporting this motion. The proponent has done amazing due diligence on this proposal. He's possibly going to create 3 new homes, 3 new doors on the property on 4 hectare lots. It's an application for a subdivision rezoning, but I think that because of the fact that some of the information was quite erroneous, pointing to the regional growth strategy, we're not talking about 1,500 doors here. We're talking about 3 3 units in an area that has amazing vista, amazing scenery, chances are, knowing our demographics, it probably is going to increase the population up there by 6 people. There was some allusion as well to increase traffic on the Forbidden Plateau Road. And of course, anybody who lives up there knows that all the traffic on that road are hikers and people recreating at the top of the mountain. So it's negligible. The proponent basically just asked for a deferral on this for 6 months so we could do some more work with the neighbors and possibly some professionals as well and bring it forward. So once again, I am proposing that we do a deferral motion on this and allow that person, just for the sake of fairness, to finish his application and go through the process in 6 months' time, where we still have the ability to deny if that be the will.
Okay, thank you. And see no further comments or questions. All those in favor? Any opposed? Oh, what's that? Oh, I thought recommendation 3 had been moved and seconded.
So I get no seconder? Anybody can second that motion, right?
Anyone can move, anyone can second. Only electoral areas can vote on this one. So that's why I called the vote. And from what I saw Director Arbor and Director Hamir voted in favor, and then I was calling who is opposed.
I will oppose this.
Okay, thank you. And if somebody can move recommendation 4.
And Mr. Chair, before you consider
Yes.
recommendation 4, as it's in the Agricultural Land Commission and my wife is chair, I'll just remove myself from the room in consideration of the perceived conflict.
All right, and we'll come and get you when we're first finished debating and voting on this. Okay.
4, that the Agricultural Land Commission be advised that the CVRD supports an ALR non-farm use application for a additional secondary dwelling in the form of a manufactured home on Howard Road, and that the recommendation that an approval be subject to the conditions that the manufactured home be removed once it is no longer inhabited by the property owner or their immediate family. And finally, that the application for the non-farm use of property within the ALR be forwarded to the ALC for final consideration.
All right. Somebody can second that? Excellent. Thanks very much. Are there any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. Next, we have recommendation 5.
The board grant a site-specific exemption of the floodplain setback for the purpose of locating buildings associated with the Comox Valley Water Treatment Project, raw water pump station in the vicinity of the lake shore, and then description of the lot. And finally, that as a condition of the site-specific exemption, the CVRD Building Services Department not issue final occupancy for a building within 15 meters of the natural boundary of Comox Lake on the property described as Lot A, until a restrictive covenant is registered on the title under Section 219 of the Land Title Act, specifying conditions that would enable the land to be safely used for the use intended, according to the terms of the professional engineer's report, which will form part of the restrictive covenant.
All right. And is there a seconder? Second. Thanks very much. Any questions on that? Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. And that brings us to recommendation 6.
This is going to make the meetings very long. We might have to think this over. That the board endorse the agency referral list as outlined in Appendix D of staff report dated June 6, 2019, and direct staff to commence the external agency referral process for the draft rural Comox Valley zoning bylaw. And finally, that Comox Valley Regional District staff consult with First Nations in accordance with the Referrals Management Program dated September 25th, 2012.
All right. Thanks very much. And are there any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. And we'll go back to Director Frisch, I think, had some comments regarding, and I can't say the acronym, but you know it.
IRTSC, and thanks for the indulgence. I just wanted to share this with the board. I don't think I have yet, that at the IRTSC we are considering how a committee like the one we're currently on could go on maybe forever, but for a longer period of time than just the selected outcomes that were put into put on our table to begin with. And so we've outlined how we really want to focus on active travel and all the different active travel modes, and we've identified a lot of the gaps that we see in our current system right now. And just a few of those off the top of my head are pathways and roadways with interregional connectedness, so roadways that cross jurisdictions and that would otherwise perhaps be ignored or difficult to work on. Education about active travel, and opportunities with School District 71. So I really just wanted to share that so you guys know that we are doing good work there, and we hope to come back with some recommendations. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And now we're on to sewer. If somebody would like to.
The Sewage Commission meeting.
Oh, Director Arbor clicked his light first, but now he's
Yeah,
texting.
I just had a suggestion while it's in my head.
Yeah.
One way that, because for the sake of the camera, that we are reading all these things, many of which are kind of usually move quite fast. One option would be to keep the same model we had, but would take perhaps more staff time to put the resolution on the video, and then as we move through them. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the suggestion. As somebody who has some knowledge of video and post-editing, the time involved would probably be crazy, I would say. So again, and I think, as someone who sat on a lot of boards, this is the only board I've ever sat on where you just say numbers and you don't actually say what you're doing. And not to say it hasn't been that way probably for decades, but just as a sober second thought, we know what we're talking about. I think it's good. And in fact, I mean, I can recall many times when people aren't sure where we are because we are moving so fast, and we aren't saying what we're talking about, especially when you move from one section to the other. So move 1, move 2, move 5, all that fun stuff. So that's my reasoning. So Director Frisch.
Yeah, I'll move the Sewage Commission minutes from June 11th.
Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes.
I'll move the Comox Valley Water Committee minutes.
If you click your light, then I'll turn your mic on. Sorry. Well, otherwise I have to hear who's talking and to try to figure it out. But it's much better if you click your button for me. But I'll leave you there for the next one. Director Hilling.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move the Comox Valley Water Committee minutes dated June 11th, 2019 be received.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And Director Grieve.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to move the Committee of the Whole minutes for June 11th, 2019.
Second. Excellent. And any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And we have some recommendations. Director Hillian.
I move that the Comox Valley Regional District Board authorize staff to make an application to the Union of BC Municipalities Urban Communities Partnering for Reconciliation Funding Program with the Comox Valley Regional District serving as a primary applicant and grant manager to organize a youth cultural camp in partnership with the Wache Friendship Center.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Any questions regarding that or comments? Director Morin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. You don't have to apologize. Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. Oh, Director Morin, did you want to move the second one?
Oh, sure. My light just went on automatically there. Magic. I'll move recommendation 2 that the Community Services Branch provide operational highlight updates in June and October of each year.
Second.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes.
I'll move that the 2018 Statement of Financial Information for the Comox Valley Regional District be approved.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes. And Director Henley?
I'll move that whereas the 2014 Comox Valley Transit Future Plan sets mode share target at 3% for all trips by 2038, and whereas the climate crisis requires aggressive action to address greenhouse gas emissions, And whereas approximately 60% of the Comox Valley's greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation, and whereas improvements to public transit can play a significant role in reducing transportation greenhouse gases, therefore be it resolved that more aggressive mode share targets be considered during the fall 2019 strategic planning session. And finally, that staff and BC Transit be requested to provide preliminary information on strategies to increase ridership, including cost estimates for consideration by the Comox Valley Regional District.
Excellent. And any questions or comments? Director Arbor, did you want to question this? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. And next, Director Arbor.
Minutes of the Comox Valley Sports Center dated June 13, 2019 for receipt.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, any opposed, and that passes. Director Hamir.
Great. I'll move that the recommendations for bylaw number 582, the Comox Valley Regional Complex Fees and Charges bylaw number 12, 2008, amendment number 8, be given first and second reading.
Second. Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor, any opposed, and that passes. And I'll leave it back to you, Director Hamir, if you'd like.
I'll move that said bylaw number 582 be given third reading.
Second. Excellent. Any questions on third reading? Seeing none, all those in favor, any opposed, that passes. Director Frisch.
I'll remove myself. I'll move that bylaw number 575 being the Regional District Pesticide Awareness Service repeal bylaw be finally adopted.
Second. Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those in favor, any opposed, and that passes. Director Arbor?
I'll move that bylaw number 579 being the Royston Garbage Collection Service Establishment bylaw number 18/2010 be amended. Amendment number 4 be finally adopted, which will extend garbage and recycling collection to the Kilmarnock area.
Excellent. Excellent.
Oh, that wasn't in there, sorry. That was just
I was going to say any questions or comments and
be finally adopted, period.
Yeah, there you go. All right, fantastic. And I don't, Director Hamir, do you?
No, sorry.
Okay. You guys are almost too quick on the microphones, but seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor, any opposed, and that passes. Director Hillian.
I'll move that bylaw number 580 being Comox Valley Regional District Officer bylaw number 21, 2008, amendment number 3 be finally adopted.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding that? Other than the fact that this requires a 2/3 vote to pass. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And then there's silence. Director Hamir.
I'll recommend that bylaw number 581 being the Comox Valley Regional District Bylaw Compliance Delegation of Authority bylaw number 108, 2010, amendment number 1 be finally adopted.
Second. Excellent. And any questions or comments? I don't see any. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes. And there, I believe, a requested action. That makes sense? Or no, sorry. That was just, I've jumped ahead one. Yeah. All right. And Director Kettler.
I'll move that we receive correspondence for June 7th, 2019 from Director Hamir requesting the approval of $2,500 grant and aid to the McDonald Wood Park Society.
Second. Excellent. Are there any questions or comments regarding that? Seeing none, all those, Director Moore, did you have a question?
I'm going too quickly.
You're going too fast. But see no questions or comments. All those in favor of receipt? Any opposed? That passes. And finally, the requested action, if somebody would like to, Director Hamir.
I'll move that the grant and aid for the McDonald Wood Park Society be approved.
Second. Excellent. Any questions or comments? Director Hillian?
Well, thanks, Chair. Just given the comments earlier on about explaining this for people who may be watching, the grant, according to the motion, is actually to assist with the operating and cost for the stewardship of the Fran Johnson Wildlife Sanctuary. and it's coming from Lazo North.
Thank you, Director Hillian. Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? And at this moment, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to really thank the members of the CVEDS board and staff who have been here for a while and smelling the dinner that is waiting for us. But we're going to take a recess for, what do we think? 5 might be a bit tight. I mean, it takes us, we're politicians, it's like 20 minutes just to say hi to people. So I'm thinking let's shoot for 15 minutes, but we're going to start at 6 at the latest. So 15 minutes is the target. Okay? And we'll take a recess.
Should we let our guests eat first?
Absolutely. All right. Good work. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jake.
Sure, we're just running a little bit behind, but if you guys want to come, we'll let you guys eat first. And we are about 5 minutes to 6, so I'm just going to start requesting people getting seated and eaten so we can get rocking and rolling around 6 o'clock. One minute. It's actually 2. Then I don't feel guilty. It's a white lie. Look at that. Just gonna ask for one missing receipt from FCM, and it's literally like the only thing in my wallet. So that's awesome. Yeah. Well, you can still submit. All right, it's 6 o'clock, so we're going to reconvene our meeting. And we have under new business, item number 2, Comox Valley Economic Development Society Innovate 2030. If somebody, excellent, thanks very much. And with that, I think we're going to pass it over to Dina Simpkin.
Thank you. So hello, everybody. My name is Dina Simpkin. I am the chair of Comox Valley Economic Development Society. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for inviting CVEDs to your meeting today to present to you. We're here to present our initial stages, I guess I'd like to call them, of our next strategic plan that we have called Innovation 2030. So with that, I would like to introduce our panel. To my left, we have Paul Blay. He's co-founder of MJB Insight. To my far right, we have Graham Trow, Executive in Residence for Innovation Island Technology Association. Next is Ruth Salmon, Seafood Innovation Strategy Consultant. And last but not least is Keith Salmon, Agri-Food Consultant. And to my left right here, I would like to introduce to you Laura Austin. She is the chair of our Innovate 2030 Volunteer Advisory Committee. About 8 months ago, the CVED's board did strike a committee, an advisory committee for our Innovation 2030. Laura and her committee have spent numerous volunteer hours providing feedback to our consultants, and I'm just going to let her begin and speak on the function of that committee for you. Thank you.
Over here. Hello, everyone. Being on a committee of this nature is very new to me. I'm one of the freshest faces to be involved in this this kind of endeavor, and it's been very eye-opening. I have to say that the steps of community engagement have been very purposeful. They've been very diverse, everything from surveys to breakout sessions and events and one-on-one sessions. And I think that that's benefited all of the consultants that have been part of this, this group. I also think that just the sheer fact of bringing people together to communicate on a grander vision and making that happen over and over again at the various events and meetings that we have is a talent unto itself. Thank you, John, for rallying all the bodies. And I also think that, particularly based on the few minutes I spent in this room before you handed the mics over to us, that when you're dealing with the amount of micromanagement of details that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, that taking a bit of a break and looking at the 10-year plan, and 2030 is just a little over 10 years from now, and what the future brings for this community is maybe shapes where and how you think about your priorities in the moment of today. And it's like any good business plan. You've got to put some big, hairy, audacious goals out there and see what sticks. And it's been a very exciting process, and thank you for letting me be part of it.
Okay, I'm going to let Paul start. Thank you very much.
My only regret is I didn't practice beforehand. Thank you, Dina and Laura. Great introduction. A nice segue to us, the consulting team, who have been working closely with CVEDs over the past 6 or so months, 7 months. In terms of the presentation, we're going to break out into 10-minute segments. I'm going to speak about the overall picture of the project and more specifically about some of the community economic development goals. Graham is going to speak about innovation and technology, and then Keith will speak about agri-food, and Ruth will speak about seafood, and then I'll do a very quick wrap about next steps, and we'll have hopefully some good time for questions and answers. All right. Building on what both Dina and Lara said, there's been a very intentional process of community engagement in this project. In fact, our firm, MDB Insight, does a lot of this work across the country, and this is one of the most comprehensive approaches to community engagement that I've been a part of. It's been really interesting. It's been very fun meeting a wide cross-section of the community. We've really tried to be open to anyone who wants to have an audience with us. We have engaged those on the very pro-development side of the spectrum. We've spoken with and listened to people who are on the opposite side of that spectrum, are a little bit more concerned about what types of development they want to have in their community. And it's important for us, at the end of the day, when the strategy's read by those members of the community who've participated in this, that they see their voice in the strategy. That is one of the most important outcomes that I could express to you when we're putting these things together. Some of the input has been from the very, the obvious business groups who would be involved in these kinds of projects, the BIAs and the chambers and other business associations, and not so obvious organizations that represent environmental concerns, social issues, housing, education. And this image behind me is meant to show you sort of the 5 broader categories, I guess, if you want to call it, of engagement that we've had. We had the forum in January, which many of you participated in. Over 200 participants in that. We've had a community and business survey open for a good amount of time. The slide there says 140 participants. We're actually up to 193 completions for that survey as of last night. We've completed a lot of targeted interviews with organizations and individuals who we know will be important stakeholders in this. We've had small group discussions, plenty of those, and we've held a couple of open houses, and through those we've had 175 participants. Beyond that, we've also participated in different events that the community has put on. So there was a housing summit last month that about 70 people participated in, and that was very eye-opening for me because I'd heard a lot about housing as an important issue, but to see 70 people from all aspects of the community getting together and talking about challenges and solutions was really interesting. So trying to emphasize the importance of this kind of inclusive engagement process. Some of the bullet points there read, we need to understand a wide range of perspectives before drawing up our recommendations. And that's what I tried to emphasize about hearing the voice of the community and reflecting that in the Innovate 2030 strategy. There's a better chance that exciting possibilities will arise, and those have. While the strategy is being written for CVED, successful implementation requires a wide range of leaders. And I think that is a really critical point, remembering that the strategy is written on behalf of CVEDs, the society, but for successful implementation, it is going to require a broader community. It's going to require many different organizations. And so by engaging them now and being sincere about that engagement now, and again, hoping to see their voices heard through this process, they'll be much more apt to want to participate in the implementation phases of the project, that they'll be much more apt to want to grab on to some of the initiatives that are identified and say, I can lead this, or I can be beside you, CVEDs, when you lead it. And and I guess that kind of emphasizes the last point there about the project having some legs. some specific things that you'll see on the economic development, the community economic development strategy, or within the strategy itself. The terminology has kind of evolved over the last few months in terms of how we're going to present this, but there'll be a summary of the stakeholder engagement. You'll see some of the more data-driven parts of the research and the economic base analysis. We're conducting a SOAR assessment, which is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, risks, and results. It's kind of a beefed up SWOT analysis. We've completed, I guess we've completed the background work on an airport lands feasibility analysis. We definitely haven't got into the recommendations in that part yet, but along with investment technology attraction strategies, community site selector profile, agri-food and aqua-food or seafood strategy, and business retention and expansion strategy, those will all be coming out into that. I don't think that we're missing too much when we cover all of those different aspects. Some of the thinking that we've had, so beyond the engagement, now we're starting to refine the directions that we think we want to take the strategy. And, these are early stage concepts. So through the Q&A, if you have any suggestions or responses or inclinations regarding any of these, please pass them on. But we believe that we want to focus the strategy on economic drivers, the kinds of industry sectors in the community that are either performing strongly now and have the potential to continue to perform strongly, or maybe there's some sectors there that aren't exactly performing at their greatest possibility, but do hold that potential. The reason that we focus on these, we're aiming to focus on these 5 broad clusters of strategy: aerospace and military, agri-food and aqua-food, professional services and research, construction and materials, and tourism and culture, is that these are, as the term economic drivers implies, they're the sectors that are generally bringing new wealth into the community. That the sales from businesses, independent entrepreneurs that are made with these businesses is new money coming in. They're selling their services, they're selling their wares outside of the Comox Valley in large part. And so that's new money that comes into the community. That's how economic development is generated, by finding those opportunities. When we look at driving towards recommendations or initiatives or opportunities that are of interest, we're going to evaluate these 5 on a couple of different scales. We're going to evaluate them on how much economic potential we believe they have. But because it's been emphasized to us from the very, very start, from the board, the CVED's board to staff, even in the RFP, action-oriented document. This is not 30,000 square foot motherhood statements completely. There needs to be an action plan, a tactical plan. And so we're going to evaluate these sectors, the initiatives, based on the community's ability to influence them. So some economic sectors really aren't influenceable by a community to a large degree. Some are. And so we want to look at that so that the action plan will be one that the community can be effective at driving towards success. My last slide before I turn it over to Graham is just to build on the economic drivers. We want to look at some important foundations that we believe are fundamental to the success of those sectors and, I guess, the economy as a whole. And we want to explore these in a similar way. We want to identify visions for them. We want to identify what does success look like when it comes to creating a technology ecosystem that those 5 sectors can grab onto and be successful with, but the economy in general, where any entrepreneur, even if they're outside of those 5 bubbles, can be successful. We want to ensure that there's a housing stock that is available to a wide range of citizens, a wide range of the community who want to participate in the economy. And that's the same with the workforce, a couple more down. Ensuring that there's a predictability or a continual emphasis on understanding what the workforce of tomorrow is required for businesses to be successful. In terms of infrastructure and land, this is infrastructure, anything from broadband to water and sewer infrastructure, and the availability of employment land for businesses who are here now that want to expand, or businesses who are looking to the Comox Valley for the first time and want to arrive. And also looking at business services. Business services to me is about providing a seamless process where businesses can move forward with their plans in an efficient way. It's not a way that necessarily means that municipalities have to bend over and give them everything, but it's a predictable and efficient way that businesses know how to adjust to. And marketing and communications is a really important concept. Proper communications ensures that successes are measured and communicated, but it also ensures that initiatives can move forward in a proper way. So those are, if you look at it as the drivers on the outside and the local economy are those foundations in the middle, that's kind of the broader concept that we're looking towards doing. Graham, I'd love to turn the mic over to you. I'll slide it over.
No, I could just use that. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just pass me that. Thank you for the opportunity, and Paul for that introduction here. So for sake of time, I'm just going to jump right into it. So technology and innovation and the growth that is happening from that. First of all, I'll just make a reference to a little chat that I had with Laura in advance of starting here. She was asking, what was one of the most exciting engagements with the community that we've had thus far. We had a really great opportunity with CVED's assisting to bring in Dr. Alan Winter, who is BC's Innovation Commissioner. He's been appointed by the province to speak to the tech sector. He has very deep domain expertise within that sector and has spent a ton of time on the ground with all sorts of communities, and I think he's given particular attention to the Comox Valley. So that was an event that brought out a whole bunch of folks from the industry that provided just wonderful input. So that's a bit of a backdrop on the engagement piece that we're really happy to have covered. With respect to this industry, it's large, it's unwieldy, it's growing incredibly fast. These particular statistics kind of provide a bit of a background and a framework which this process is really embracing. So from a monetary perspective, globally, very, very large. Canada, is accounting for a very small percentage of that from a global perspective, and BC, as we're showing here, is representing about 20% of Canada's performance and activity. If we break that down a little closer to home, we have Victoria now reporting about a $5 billion economic impact with respect to the tech sector. Kelowna, as another comparative, is doing about $1 billion. The rest of that is primarily Vancouver. Now, that's when we measure things with a B. Our region isn't quite there. We're measuring things by tens of millions or hundreds of millions, and we're working towards the big B. But this is a backdrop that I just wanted to have out there. As you'll see with some of the boards, we're trying to create a very basic framework to what is tech. Tech is touching everything these days, but really we have 4 basic quadrants to consider for what we would define tech. First of all, hardware. Back in the day, IBM made hardware. They made mainframe computers, and they felt that was the world. Along comes Microsoft, essentially, making software. Microsoft didn't really understand the concept of networks and didn't really embrace the internet, but folks like Google and Facebook certainly did. They represent networks. What we have now is a combination of applied sciences, so let's just say SpaceX, rocket science. There's all sorts of applied science companies that are using tech in new and novel ways. All of these companies are now really working in more combinatorial ways to integrate all of these things and really grow beyond what we kind of thought was possible. When it comes to innovation, that also, I think, has 4 basic quadrants that we can consider. First of all, raw invention. There's all sorts of folks inventing all sorts of cool things. Adaptation. We're jerry-rigging things to make it work. systems, putting systems to play to really be innovative. And then if we don't implement or execute on that, then we're just doing that all for naught. Now here's the thing. We can look at traditional industries, fisheries, aquaculture, backyard mechanics, manufacturing, highly innovative. But again, what's happening is these things are coming together in very unique ways, very, very quickly. So if we really cube that out a little bit, what we have is this other term from the industry, this disruption. How the heck does all this disruption happen? Well, it happens because of the layering of technology and innovation in these 4 basic quadrants, and that's changing the world really quick. Right, and it's creating levels of competition and need for expertise that really a lot of traditional industries just haven't embraced. I made this widget and I sell it. That no longer really works in a lot of spaces. So these are the realities of this particular sector. When it comes to what Paul was mentioning with respect to the building of an ecosystem, I think we can benefit from considering another framework for how ecosystems are built. What are the constituent parts of an ecosystem? And we start off with effectively some pillars of what would really drive that. This is the foundational work that this study and these commitments really represent. So first of all, we got to have some great ideas. We have great ideas coming from the confluence of all of these things to make things possible that really weren't possible before. A lot of communities, including the Comox Valley, have really awesome and exciting opportunities to so-called cross-pollinate. We hook up agriculture with biotechnology. We hook up advanced manufacturing to traditional forestry. Things of that nature are where disruption happens within industry. Talent. We've got to have folks that have the talent to execute on great ideas. Not an easy thing to wave a magic wand on, but we want that talent to be driven and available and attracted to things that are happening within our economies. Obviously, we want to inspire them and engage them, but there's a real theme that's happening, and I think everyone in this room probably has some example of it, and I kind of call it a repatriation. So these are individuals that maybe grew up here, they went to high school here, and they went off and they've done amazing things. And guess what? They're coming back. Maybe they're coming back because the grandparents are here and there's daycare, or they're coming back for all sorts of reasons. It's what I call a micro trend, and I really think that this community in particular should embrace that. Now, we got some great ideas and we got some talent. Well, generally speaking, if we're going to change the world, we got to have some capital behind that. So capital systems and capital availability becomes very important. Generally, we want what we would consider strategic capital, which is smart money. I'm investing in an agri-tech thing because I have a background in agriculture. That's a logical thing. Of the clients that I work with in the region, virtually every dollar of the clients, that they've raised, has come from strategic capital. When we consider putting all those things together, then we need customers. We got to be able to execute and sell this. Now, when we consider tech, we can consider that we've got a global opportunity. But guess what? On the front side of that, we need people that we can drive to go see and test things and get some feedback. That actually is a real driver and an imperative that a lot of people don't really consider when we think of what tech can do. So these are the pillars that kind of create the underpinnings of a tech ecosystem. When we get into it a little bit deeper, and I think we've got one of the boards or some resource materials that will support this further, we have 4 basic things. We have people, we have members, we have entities that comprise what an ecosystem would be. We have tangible things, and I'm going to back channel this in a second here, and we have a whole bunch of intangible things. Then we have a bunch of things that are going to grow over the course of time. So we in the province look at some I refer to called VVK, Vancouver, Victoria, and Kelowna, and we, in some respects, we say we want that. Okay, so we have to consider how did they get to that point, and essentially this is how they did it. A lot of time went into building what we would define as the members of a tech ecosystem. So from entrepreneurs that are taking great risks, to the folks that are going to be employed by some of those early companies, mentors, advisors, et cetera. These are the constituent parts to what would be defined as a membership model to building of an ecosystem. Tangible things. Well, again, pretty obvious stuff. Physical spaces are still required. We do have a lot of remote workers in this valley, but when they scale projects and services, they come together in a physical space. You know, we're still not defying that. A whole host of other assets that we would consider to be tangible. Now, the intangible things are something that often get overlooked. So soft aspects of a process like this with all sorts of aspirational planning, well, that actually means stuff, and it's somewhat intangible, but as this stuff matures, all of a sudden you've got the ability to execute on really cool opportunities that this industry is providing. When we consider stuff that grows over time, you know, the key word is over time. It takes decades in a lot of cases to build asset value in both tangible and intangible things. I'm not so sure that this community can wave a magic wand and start spending tens of millions of dollars on some physical space to house everybody doing cool things. If you can, let me know. But talent, hard assets, soft assets, they need time to mature and grow, which is actually very organic and agricultural in concept. So that represents the framework of our engagement to date. We've had a ton of inputs from the community as well as the industry. It's what we're here to do, and thank you again for this opportunity to give you the broad strokes of that work.
So for the project and through the project, we've reviewed a lot of literature we've found ourselves. John sends me unending reports on different things to look at, and Jeff is remarkable in the number of reports he comes up with. So we've reviewed a lot of reports, but what I'd like to focus on here are reports that are specifically focused on the Comox Valley agri-food sector. And they're reports that cover about a 15-year span from 1999 up into 2015. And when you review these reports, there are just three themes that just come up again and again and again. And the first theme is that there is 70% of the ALR land in the Comox Valley is not being farmed. So there's a tremendous untapped potential of land available. The second theme is that's repeated again and again is that what's hampering the growth of the agri-food sector is a lack of food processing capacity. And the third theme that comes up is that the farmer's market needs a home. It needs a permanent home, and it needs to have opening hours that are somewhat equivalent to other food retailers so that the local community can actually come at convenient times for them to buy local products. In terms of stakeholder engagement, we've been involved in the initiatives that Paul identified in the forums and in the open houses. And in addition to them, we've done targeted interviews and small group discussions. In terms of the small group discussions, we've met with the two Farmers Institutes, the Comox Valley Farmers Institute and the Mid-Island Farmers Institute, and met with them as groups. And in both cases, the people we met with and others have been remarkable in then following up with emails, some of them sending long documents about their certain aspects of the agri-food industry. So through them, we've met with beverage industry people, we've met with members of the small-scale food processors, and everyone's not only been very forthcoming in the meetings, but in all cases, there's been follow-up through emails and phone calls. So we've got a lot of input in that way. And again, amazingly, it's the same themes that come up again and again. And so we're now in 2019, and we're still hearing about the 70% of ALR land not being farmed. We're still hearing about the lack of food processing capacity, and we're still hearing about the need for a permanent home for the farmers market. When we started the project, we kind of made a value chain, a theoretical value chain for Comox Valley Agri-Food. And the value chain consists of the supply chain, producing the product and moving it down to the consumer. And then there's the indirect players, the service providers, and the transport systems and that kind of thing they're the indirect players. And then there are environmental issues and regulatory issues. And we're looking at all of them, but again, it's come down to these three key areas that have been our focus, and they're the area of production, and processing, and market opportunities. In the case of production, we're looking at all of this land that could be brought into production. Not all of the land will be good for all crops, but it will be good for something. It could produce something. So it'll be a case of matching a crop perhaps to a piece of land. So we're looking at ways, strategies that we could increase the access to that land, make more of this land available for production. We're also looking at ways to get new farmers and young farmers onto that land, making it accessible to them. We're looking at land matching programs. We've had discussions with the young agrarians organizations around the possibility of establishing a land matching office in the Comox Valley. So the idea here is that through bringing more land into production and increasing some of the intensity of farming that land, we could get a lot higher volume of production. Moving on to food processing, this creates an issue, because if we start producing a lot more product, that product is going to come primarily through the summer growing season. So we've got a lot more fresh product coming forward in a restricted period of the year. And that's not going to help make product available through the late fall, through the winter, and through the spring. So just higher production alone won't help make more product available to the local market. What we've got to do is take some of that fresh product and process it into value-added products that have a longer shelf life, that would be available at other times of the year, throughout the year, when fresh product may not be so available. So to us, the Valley needs to expand its food processing capacities. And we've been looking around for funding sources, and there are funding sources available that are specifically targeting this type of initiative. So in our mind then, that you've already got a great food analysis lab. So if there was a food processing center brought in and their operations were integrated, this would give the agri-food sector the capacity to produce safe, high-quality, value-added products that could be available throughout the year. And to me, these value-added products are key to beginning to expand the markets, to really beginning to access not the local market, and maybe further down the road beginning to access some off-island and export markets. And so this, I think, these value-added products could begin to move the farmer's market into a greater state of profitability, where you could begin to think about finding a permanent home and keeping the hours open longer, because there would be products available for the consumers to buy. There's also things we're looking at where you could extend the growing season through high tunnel greenhouses and these different things where you could, at each end, you could expand the growing season. So there would be fresh product available for a longer period in the year. So there would be, the farmer's market would have fresh product more available. It would also have value-added products available. And so the consumer would just have a wider array of local products available to them. So what I'm envisioning here, and is a case where there could be a food innovation center, and that would be kind of like an umbrella. That would be an umbrella over the farmer's market and the food analysis lab and a food processing center, and that they could be integrated. They would be operating together. And then this could be the focal point for the producing community, so that there could be more cooperation with producers and coordination, so that they could produce, there was production focused on what the food processors were looking for, and the market and the farmer's market would be saying what's selling and what's in demand and what's not in demand, so that the processors and the producers could adjust production according to the demand.
Good evening, everybody. Now we'll shift to seafood, and I'll be quick. Just a sec here. Okay. So we've taken the same approach, the value chain approach with seafood, given the fact that each stage is important to consider if we want to impact productivity and achieve overall economic development. I'm sure all of you in this room know, but I'll just, as a reminder, Bain Sound is the largest shellfish producing area in BC. Products are in high demand in export markets, and there's a significant opportunity for expansion in both traditional and also new species. However, there are a lot of challenges in expanding that potential. And we've, again, just like Keith talked about, we've talked to a wide range of people about that challenge. So we've identified a number of initiatives that will directly impact the volume and value of production, because that's the issue. We do know that a third of all the tenures are underutilized, so a third of the existing tenures are underutilized. So getting new tenures into play is not the biggest problem. We need to increase tenure utilization, and that's there at the top. That becomes really the key opportunity. That increased utilization is linked to expedited tenure renewal process. The time it takes to renew or process tenure documents is years, and it becomes a real challenge. Access to capital is an issue, and that needs to be addressed, because small business loans need to be available for some of these new growers. Education and extension services are key as well. We're hearing that many of the new growers don't have the understanding of the basics of shellfish farming or even the business of farming, so that's key as well. Because harvesting closures are frequent due to high water quality issues, we need to continue to look at solutions and initiatives around that, and I'm sure you guys have talked around this table about that issue. We do also know that the value of production per acre can be increased in a variety of different ways, and we need to find initiatives that would support that. Higher value species, and the one that always comes to mind is gooey duck. But what's really needed is an encouraging new supportive policy to support the growing of gooey duck. New species like kelp and other seaweed, scallops, multiple species growing on one tenure, so not just, so some diversification of species. New technology can play a role here. In a lot of our consultations, we're hearing that there's new grow-out equipment for oysters that are available in other jurisdictions that could improve productivity here. We need to access that. Moving quickly on to the processing, the second goal we've identified is increased processing efficiency and the range of products. Again, through consultation, we're finding that there's new processing equipment and technology that could be utilized by the processors in Bain Sound. There's also a potential to look at non-traditional product opportunities for the byproducts. And interestingly enough, we have made contact with, through the Seafood Festival, made contact with a researcher at Memorial University in Newfoundland that's very interested in working with us on a project that could take the waste products of shellfish, the meat as well as the shell, combined with the waste products from fisheries and finfish aquaculture, for other applications such as fuel, industrial chemicals, feed additives, cosmetics. She's doing some really interesting work in Newfoundland and is very excited about our Innovate strategy and certainly would like to partner if that turns out. The last sort of area is important goal for the shellfish sector is increased public trust and awareness. If we're going to see substantial growth in the sector, it's critical that the industry be more fully supported by the community. So there's a number of initiatives that we have in mind to increase the awareness and understanding of the industry and its practices, again, helping local community understand what the benefits of growth could be. So, Paul, over to you.
So just in conclusion, to give you an idea of the next steps, we're going to be beginning to harness all of this into one document that will include vision, rationale for the vision for the drivers and the foundation elements, but we'll have clear action plans. We'll have performance measures. We'll identify organizations that may be partners on the types of initiatives we've identified. The draft strategy, we envision the end of August for a draft strategy, and then we'll turn to September to present that to the Innovate 2030 Advisory Committee for feedback, also present it to the public for feedback, and then go into the process of updating that, updating the draft towards a final document and getting it through the channels afterwards. So thank you for your time. It's been great to have this opportunity to give you an overview as to what we've been up to and where we're going next. We look forward to any kinds of questions or comments that you might have.
All right, thanks very much. And yeah, so if you got questions, just push your buttons and we'll get to you. And we'll start with Director Hamir.
Great, thank you, and thanks to all the panel members. It was really great to see all of the work kind of condensed into a really short slides. So I wanted to ask, you've done so much community consultation, all four of you, and is there anything that stuck out in your mind, like some things that surprised you, or conversations that really stuck in your mind, a company that's doing really interesting things, so just a flavor of something that kind of sticks with you about something happening in the Comox Valley?
I think the sincerity of the agriculture community is striking. That, they're not in it for the profitability.
Graham, can you just pass the mic down there? If that's right.
To me, it's been the sincerity of the people that I've talked to, that they're not in it for the profitability for the most part. There's something there, and they care about what they're doing. That's their life. They're invested in it. They care about the Comox Valley. So it's not solely sort of a self-centered thing. Like, I'm struck how food security is so important to so many producers, that this is important to them. So it's not just expanding an operation in some way for more benefit to themselves, but they're sincerely seem to be dedicated to the community as well.
Thanks.
Oh.
I'll respond maybe in a more general way, actually, because I feel like our role, our mission is to identify themes from all of the things we're hearing. So yes, I've heard interesting things from individuals, but they get kind of coalesced into a broader picture as to, and that removes the element of just having one voice being too strongly heard, in a sense, and hearing a broader cross section of the community. So, again, in the final working document, I hope that you see in the themes that we'll identify key themes that we've heard through the consultate, and by engagement I mean the whole thing. So that will be one of our goals. So.
I would. Thanks. I would just add that it's been really neat to have some work with the Anandia Labs and the Cannabis Research Lab facility that's going up. That's a great example of applied sciences, getting into the genomics of what now is arguably going to be a very large industry. Those are the kinds of really larger capital investments that can create spin-offs. They're the precursors to what one might consider as what goes into a hub or a cluster. I hesitate to use those words prematurely, but that's a big capital investment, and it's been great dealing with the Page brothers on that.
All right, and Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I had a question about the working document and sort of the timeline on having that done. What do you guys think a timeline is for that?
We're going to be getting into the full writing stage now. The end of August is our goal for a draft document, which will then be presented to the advisory committee. Yeah.
Well, very exciting. I love the presentation and all the information that you guys decided to share with us. About the farmers market, I would think that you would definitely find partners for a lot of those ideas. I know our municipality in Courtenay have been talking about a permanent home. I wouldn't be surprised if Comox and Cumberland and the regional districts are thinking the exact same thing. I just had a quick question about a bit of the base analysis finding, and I noticed that our population, it's maybe a little tangential to the conversation, but we're at 4.7 and the provincial average is 12%. I'm wondering which communities are driving that 12% increase in BC.
I don't know the numbers really specifically, but I would hazard a guess to say it's the suburban communities in Vancouver that are driving a significant share of that population, or Vancouver as well, a significant share of that population growth. And maybe it's the, do you call it VVK? Yeah. Maybe that's the easiest way to probably describe it, Vancouver, Victoria, and Kelowna. Those certainly are seeing growth.
And maybe better that we don't have to deal with 12% or more.
Well, maybe. I mean, and that's part of the conversations that we've had. We've heard from people who are not pro-growth. We don't need 12% growth. We don't want to be that. So that's an important voice to have heard. Yeah.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
And Director Morin.
Oh, great. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. It's really interesting. I had a question around kind of the seafood aspect. And when you were talking about kelp and seaweed and things like that, it's a really interesting idea. And I wondered if there's been some conversations around sustainability, because of course we've overfished salmon, and we're depleting the ocean's resources, and these sound like really exciting, innovative ideas. But of course, all that sea life, I'm a fisherman's daughter, so.
Right, fair enough.
All that's, 40 years of fishing, off and on, but, it's all part of the ecosystem. And so I have, these ideas are exciting in terms of economic development, but I'm always very concerned about the sustainability aspect,
absolutely.
and how we impact, these life systems?
Yeah, no, it's a very astute question, and I think which we do need to weigh into all of this in terms of even the carrying capacity in Bay and Sound. There is a threshold, and we haven't met that yet, but we have to be cognizant of that. We do, again, that's at what pace do you go ahead just because it's economically viable? It may not be environmentally sustainable. But I know that work is being done by the University of Vancouver Island, those capacity carrying studies. So that I think needs to be introduced here, but that lens is always there. But you raise an interesting point, too, about sustainability on an actual tenure. I mean, to have a variety of seafood, is possible. Like some things work well with others. So, but I think you raise a really important point that all of these things have to be viewed with that lens, not just what's profitable, but what works. And certainly I think that the close relationship we have with North Island College, with VIU, they're doing that kind of research all the time. So, but a valid point, and we do need to address it in the strategy. Thank you.
One of the considerations that we have had, and was mentioned at the AGM panel discussion, was incorporating the UN sustainability goals, the principles of those into the strategy, connecting the actions that we're going to be recommending to how they may support those goals. So maybe that gives you also some comfort that we're thinking that way.
Excellent. And Director Frisch.
Back to me already. Well, I just also wanted to point out how exciting it was to hear about the opportunities in value added, whether it was food production or I noticed construction and materials touched on that as well, about not just being a construction industry that builds what we need locally, but provides some sort of materials elsewhere, or maybe that's tied into tech as well. I'm no expert, but I guess the question I had was when we talk about that those value-added markets, is there a piece about transportation and market access that we are really lacking, or is that something that's easy? I know we touched on it a bit, but is that something that's easily surmountable or to be dealt with?
I think that for most of the producers and the processors right now are thinking about the local market. So the transportation and distribution isn't such a big thing right now. And I think that it's a good idea to focus on the local market, and the farmers market can be a great incubator to prepare people for export markets in the future. And then I think that distribution would become an issue, and it is right now for small-scale food processors who do want to ship to Vancouver or somewhere because they can't fill the pallets. They have to make arrangements to sort of fit their products on share a pallet and things like that. So I think it's an issue right now. I think if it expanded to the point where it was really a good idea to start looking at off-island markets, then it might not be such an issue because the volume would be increased.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks again.
And Director Kettler.
Yeah, I was happy to hear about you guys looking into, the micro trends, as it was called, sort of with the repatriation of young people coming back. And I think that it's not just that, but we're getting lots of influx of young families from Victoria, Vancouver, Calgary, and a lot of remote workers, and it's really prominent in Cumberland, but it's all over the valley. And this is kind of like one of the last bastions of a big regional economic development service, and kind of has a tendency toward those broad strokes and catering to the bigger industries, which don't necessarily need the economic help from the society. But we do have these lots of young entrepreneurs moving here, and I'm just wondering if you guys feel you have the capacity to really attend to those that new market that's emerging.
Graham, I can I have a thought on that if you want to let something gel in there. But it's going to connect. I'm sorry, Director Kettler. Thank you. Connect your comment, Director Kettler, to Director Frisch's earlier comment about limitations in infrastructure or transportation. And I think one of the things we have to be aware of is that there is limitations in getting goods out of Comox Valley. But as Graham alluded to, he didn't say it specifically, but the capital that's going to drive economic success in the next 10 years and probably the next 100 years is human capital. It's not machine capital necessarily. So your most important, in my mind, where my thought is, the most important transportation network in this area is your airport and your broadband infrastructure to get people in and out, to allow people to have access to where they need to go to see their clients, whether it's Vancouver once a week or Toronto once a month or India once every 6 months. That's probably the most important kind of transportation infrastructure that you have. Yeah, Graham, do you have anything to build on that?
That's a perfect little segue there, because I think transportation infrastructure for people is super important. So somewhat of a day in the life. I had some work with Network BC up North Island, like Tassus, Gold River, Sayward, and stuff like that, bringing internet connectivity to those other communities. It's a big capital project for the province. I was able to come home to my beloved Comox and walk down to the float plane in my flip-flops and end up in Vancouver to attend meetings with Innovate BC and the government. And no one, none of my peers had that luxury to be able to do that so casually and so effectively. So I felt a little privileged to be able to do that. So the moving of people is a big deal. Having points to international destinations for any industry is a big deal. But I'll reflect on the size and capacity stuff. First of all, the references that I used here were big industry companies. These are not companies on our island. One of the support documents that you guys will see in our work comes from the Innovation Commissioner, who basically inventoried a real fact for our province, which is 90%, as in 90, of tech companies in our province have less than 10 people. So those are small businesses, 90%. 93% of those businesses are in the service side of it. So our entire province is really small tech. And if we go to smaller communities, it's generally even smaller. My client base within Innovation Island, with here locally, these are all very small companies that are working to build a bit more of a base. This community has certainly a lot of remote workers, and there's a lot of folks that we would call, solopreneurs, freelancers. We used to call them contractors. Tech likes to invent new names. But those folks, for the most part, have wonderful lifestyles. And actually, the thing is that those folks don't start businesses or rent commercial real estate. So what we want to do is inspire folks to create small businesses that are going to grow and maybe hire a few folks. But everything we do is really localized. It's on the slightly smaller scale than not.
Director Hillian, you had your light on, if I recall.
Yeah, and then I loaned my microphone to Graham here, and I got bumped out of the
You've been very patient. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I am an invalid tonight, so I appreciate your consideration, Chair. So first of all, I heard most of you I think all of you at the CVRD's AGM, along with the Innovation Commissioner, and it was fascinating then. It's fascinating again tonight. Just a couple of questions. One in relation to agriculture. In the list that you gave of the various studies that you'd looked at that have been done over the years, I don't know if you had the work that was done related to social procurement for the CVRD, and that was Sandra Hamilton's work around agricultural products potentially being used in local institutions like the hospital and such. I just wondered.
didn't have it up there, no.
Oh, okay. Are you aware of it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I know that, I mean, I don't know where that project ended up, but a lot of similar ideas were being discussed at that time around local processing and such. Yeah. So I was just curious about that. The other thing, though, that I wanted to ask, primarily in relation to tech, but probably in other sectors as well, to what extent is our financial sector willing to come here and play in a big way? You know, the local banks and credit union, it strikes me, have an opportunity to recirculate local dollars in the local economy. And I'm just wondering what the challenges are with getting that sort of capital investment to be generated.
So thanks for that question. So the very quick overarching summary to this is generally speaking, tech-based startups will use what we call founders cash, so their own money. Blood, sweat, and tears. They'll maybe then get to the point where they'll engage what we would call family and friends, Uncle Bill, whoever. That then leads to perhaps having a viable opportunity for angel investors. Angel investors in our province that are accredited, and in some cases those who are not accredited can benefit from a 30% tax credit that companies can earn as a process that gives 30 cents on the dollar back to those investors. When a company completes those kind of prior rounds, they often will qualify for grant capital through different governmental institutions, National Research Council, IRAP programs, other larger programs for tech and innovation and R&D. At that stage, sometimes they can qualify for certain debt instruments through such as community futures, and in some cases, with enough collateral, more traditional lenders can come to play, but not often. What then will happen is that those companies may or may not get to the point where they can access what would be considered venture capital, which is a whole other conversation. But traditional debt and senior debt and traditional finance mechanisms generally don't play until much later stages in tech startup land.
And maybe I'll just have one quick follow-up, Mr. Chair, and then I apologize to everybody because I actually have to leave early. We had at our council meeting a couple of weeks ago award-winning technology students from the local high school, and apparently this happens on an ongoing basis, that they win national awards for their work.
Robotics guys?
Exactly, yeah. So I'm just wondering if there's any link between the sort of work that you're doing and what they're doing, and if we can have kind of an incubator for these talented young people and others who, you know, might have ideas and might benefit from some mentorship along the way.
Thank you again. That is an excellent example of what's happening in our school systems and what's happening within special interest groups to advance things like, you know, robotics and competing at a real international level. I think our community is above average in that respect, and we certainly support that and want to support that more. I think, generally speaking, that's a perfect example of how to have more interface with NIC, how to have more interface with the community, how to perhaps give some of those opportunities to those students to engage with industry or companies that might have some opportunity for them. Often those best and brightest students in aspects of tech or innovation get pulled to larger, you know, educational institutions globally, and that often is great. You know, they get opportunities to do really wonderful things, and maybe we'll get them back. You know, and that is also happening. But some of those students are now being recruited by Stanford and Waterloo and places that are not here. We don't have the academic institutions to serve their ambitions or their talents. I wish we did, but we don't. And that'll take another generation. But what I am seeing as a micro trend is that those individuals are coming back with their experiences or their successes, because this is a pretty amazing place to be, and it really is. And so that is happening.
All right, thanks. And Director Hillian, are you going to exit now, or you still got a little bit?
Well, by the time I take my plate over and a few things like that, so I will excuse myself. Thanks very much, Chair.
No problems, and thanks for your patience as I forgot about you.
Can you sing something from Phantom of the Opera?
Oh, you're mean.
Good thing I didn't turn your mic on first.
He's a really good singer, by the way. He probably knows something from it.
I actually
do. Stop talking.
All right.
Okay, well, I guess it falls on me to be the grumpy old guy of the room. So, like you said yourself, what's changed? We heard all this stuff 15 years ago. We have, underutilized agricultural land. I think we produce an average of $1,700 an acre, where I think Pitt Meadows is like $27,000 or something. We've heard about, local food production. We heard about processing and bottling, storage. We heard about, greenhouses and extended growing seasons. As I say, permanent farmers market, also inefficient aquaculture and out there. All these things have been hashed out again and again. Now, my question is, we live within 12 to 20 hours of 4 to 5 million people, considering the Pacific Northwest and Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland. So we have a market there. Our average farmer, I think, is 58 years old. I'm not sure if that still holds true. I know a lot of farmers are actually finally leaving at 74. So what's going to be the spark this time to actually ignite this thing?
Yeah, you are a bit grumpy, but...
Just saying. Back in my day.
He's usually in bed by now.
If to give you my honest opinion is, it's this strategy. There's a focal point here, and it's happening at just the right time because the government wants to support, for instance, a food processing center. They're behind it. They contact, through our discussions, the person that's running one of these funds contacted us and said, we want you to apply. So I think that and why I emphasize that this has come up again and again, I think that there's a timing. And my personal feeling is that now is the time. And I like action things. I wouldn't, because we've read so many reports, not these 15, not these reports that I showed here, but in other jurisdictions where there's ag economic development strategies, ag plans brought forward, and nothing happens. Yeah. And so it's not just in the Comox Valley that that's the case. But I do honestly feel there's a real opportunity to act now. And I think there's, and the Food Analysis Lab is a wonderful first piece because we can build on that. We can say that exists. And now what we need is to have a processing center, and the Food Analysis Lab is there to make sure it's safe, high-quality food, do the testing. So I think there's a real start. And I think that if the producers feel that this is happening, that there's a focal point, that there will become more cooperation and coordination among them as well.
I guess further to that would be, what can government do besides just get out of the way?
Provide some funding.
Got to start a service.
If I could add to that, Edwin,
Oh, just hold. I think I misunderstood the question. So that probably wasn't an appropriate answer. If you're the local government, you were asking about.
Yeah. Just the regulatory stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I think the regulatory stuff, and I think that, you know, in a lot of these proposals, it's a requirement. There's a section in there that, do you have the support of the local governments? Do they have this? Have they expressed their support for these things? So I think expressions of support and getting it out there that local government is in support of these initiatives is a wonderful thing. So I do apologize for my first sort of flippant answer.
Excellent.
You go ahead, because I was just going to basically say on the regulatory side, and particularly for seafood as well, that there's a lot of regulatory things that I think will come up in the strategy. But go ahead.
No. Edwin, I love your comments all the time, but I haven't been here for 15 years, but I've been here for 10. One of the first things that I did was participate in the Comox Valley Sustainability Strategy, where a lot of these issues were brought to the table, and I have to agree that off the top, a lot of these things seem to have been discussed before. But there's one big theme that has been around for a while that I think has to be more of a driver, and it's value added. If our forestry just cuts down trees and sells raw logs, there's no value add to that, and it'll die. If we just catch fish and we catch all of them, then they're all gone. If we just cut down hay and make bales, that's not going to go too much. We've got to focus and double down on value added, and local governments have got to support anything that they can do within their purview to really help value added. Because if we look at food systems within the tech perspective, we have clean meat or synthetically made meats. We have these burgers and alternatives coming around the world that are backed by venture capital, and they're backed by applied sciences and the tech sector. They will wait for no one. And so our opportunity here is to double down on value added, which is a core element of what this part of the strategy is designed to do, in my opinion.
All right. So far, we've just got a couple more questions. Director Hamir.
Great, thank you. So a couple of questions for me, if that's okay. I sit on another funding board that funds agricultural innovation, and I know of a couple of projects that have been going on here in the Valley that actually aren't very well known, and maybe the board doesn't know that not only is Tree Island Yogurt like a great yogurt maker, but Scott has been doing some innovative things around high pressure treatment of the yogurt, but also putting that onto shellfish and other products for export so that they can be exported. And the other one is Beaver Meadows Farm, who has the contract to extract some of the invasive seaweed in Deep Bay. They're working with TRU, Thompson Rivers University, in feeding that to cattle to reduce their methane production. Like some amazingly innovative stuff that nobody knows about. And I don't know if it's a humbleness here that we have, but so my question is, like, what are we losing when we don't talk about these things? And if we could promote that, what body should be promoting that? And how should we kind of frame that to the rest of the world, I think. So that's one question. My second question is around tech and agriculture. I think you know, we might.
I'm just going to say, let's just do one question at a time, just so that.
Yeah, answer that, sure.
I'll be quick on the front side. So what those guys are doing in those projects is amazing. It's exactly what I advocate for. It's exactly what's happening at a global level. You know, combining tech and agriculture, what those operations are doing is extremely significant, and in some cases, you know, globally significant. We need more of that, right? And to your point on the storytelling or sharing of that, yeah, I think that needs to be done more. You know, I tend to think it should be done selectively, but those are exact examples of what our work is trying to advocate for.
Well, whose role is it to tell the story then? Like me? Like, who should take that lead?
Yeah, it's a good question. We put marketing and communications as one of those foundational elements, and that's exactly, Director Hamir, what we're thinking in that respect. And so I guess whose responsibility is it? If it's directed on a broader promotional level, look at us, come to Comox Valley, then I believe that is a core responsibility of CVEDs. And I think our recommendations will come in and around that. And there are a lot of communities who are getting very good at telling their story, and they even have cute URLs like ileftthecity.com or buildanewlife.ca. You know, those are really interesting. And when you go to those websites, you just see dozens, maybe even hundreds of video podcast sort of stories of people who've arrived and have a great story to tell. Yeah.
And I've thought about this a bit because, you know, and you and I talked a bit about there are different groups within the agri-food community, and they think they don't get along. They think they hold slightly different views. But, you know, after speaking with the different groups and different individuals, there's a real commonality that I don't think that is fully acknowledged by individual groups or organizations. So when I'm thinking about a food innovation center, I'm thinking like there could be an oversight body with representatives from all of the different groups so that there would be a sharing between the groups, and I think a greater understanding within the different groups. And maybe it could be a body like that began to tell a story about agri-food in the valley.
Before you get on to your second question, I'm not going to retract or backtrack on something that I said, but I want to emphasize a different angle to it. I said it's CVED's responsibility, and in part I think it would be to sort of lead the charge. But the story has so much more credibility if it's a business person speaking to another business person than if it's you as a director, you know, working for the representing the municipality, or a staff member of the municipality saying that. So it came to mind when Keith said communication between organizations is important. So yes, CVEDs lead the charge, but it takes a village, you know, to really sell it in a really positive frame.
Cool.
Yeah.
So my second question is, and I know I just saw Mike leave the room, who initially was saying that, you know, he's an older farmer, doesn't use a lot of high-tech stuff, but I was wondering if you did come across farms that are using tech. Like on our farm, we can't live without Google Docs. Like we, you know, communicate with all of our staff via a cloud type of service. We use certain apps on all of our phones. Like I can't understand how a farmer lives without a smartphone, because there's just too much information that you have to do. Did you come across that, and did you see examples of ag and tech working together?
I wouldn't say it was big.
Okay.
You know, I wouldn't say that.
There's examples, right?
Yeah, there's examples, but yeah, it's not.
And is that a shortfalling of our community? Like, is that something that we need to focus on, training and just getting farmers more comfortable with what?
Awareness, and I think that more will be embraced when it becomes at a scale. Like, a lot of people think it's too big, and rightly so, that a lot of the tech is not for them. They're smaller farmers. It's for big farms, and in a lot of cases that's true. But so we've tried to focus on things that could be applicable, because, you know, in some of the meetings the lack of profitability is really driven home. So if we start talking about high tech, we lose track. But I agree that those are wonderful examples that people could begin to think of that as tech, as part of what they're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, because most of it is free. Everyone has a phone anyways. Yeah, I can understand, because normally we get 30 to 40 people at our Farmers Institute meetings, and when we did spreadsheets for farmers, we had like 4. So, so there's a bit of a fear there too, I think, and like a lack of
sort of like, ooh, can't go there. You know? So.
If I could add to that, though, and this is just, you know, let's call it tough love, but any industry that doesn't utilize enabling technologies to help them do what they do better, is going to die, right? Like just facts of life, right? And so, but you can't force any practitioner in any trade or industry to adopt technologies or enabling technologies. You can inspire them or challenge them from time to time, but there are examples all around the world where very advanced systems and technologies are enabling traditional industries, and guess what? Those are the winners. Right, so we have choices to support these sorts of things or not. When we have commoditized products and services, well, they have commoditized prices and profitability. When we focus on value-added products and services that are from commoditized raw materials, profitability is going to go up. So these are aspirational. They're supposedly inspirational. We can't control it, but we can lead the conversation in that direction.
I think also we need, as you bring up with the apps as part, we often think of ag tech as some production related practice, and so we need to broaden our idea of what technology is, what innovation is, so that it becomes anything that's innovative for an individual farmer is an innovation, so that I think we can make it more friendly by broadening our definitions of what is technology or what is innovation.
If I super brief, but if you wind the clock back to 200 years, agriculture is the most technologically advanced industry in the history of man. Like full stop. Now, it has a whole lot of stopping and slowing in some respects, but you go back to 200 years, and agriculture is a technological endeavor, full stop.
Right, and Director Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just to follow up on that, I think one of the points to Director Hemmer's point might be that we need a succession plan. So if the average age is 58, well, no surprise that iPhones aren't that prevalent on farms. But with the new blood coming in, it could change that. I wanted to ask a question about the 5 sectors. And as we talk about them, it seems like a few are sort of coming up as maybe higher potential. Do you guys feel that all of these have significant potential, and that's your job next, is to figure out which ones to act on, or do you suspect, this is a twofold question, that they will all be sort of taken up in some sort of strategic plan? And then just to follow quickly, the aerospace, I haven't heard a lot about it, and wondering how that ties into the airport lands feasibility, if that lives there or if there's something else.
Good question. First off, it's not final. Nothing's final. We're still taking input, and we're going to be writing, I guess. So we got about 4 weeks probably to kind of flesh things out. We consider those 5 to have potential, and we've kind of weeded out some others. We still have questions around them, even today, talking about the bundle of tourism and culture. Is that one bundle, or is that really 2? Culture is culture as an economic driver is something that I believe in, and wonder if it's strong enough to kind of stand on its own. Agriculture, agri-food and seafood, we talked already about kind of splitting that up so it gets its own, they get their own distinct voice out of the strategy. With respect to the airport lands, those they're coined the airport lands because they're near the airport. As I think you all know, they're at the roundabout there. So those aren't directly intended in our minds to be aerospace related. We've had conversations with people who believe that there's potential, even more potential for the aerospace industry, and we purposely connected it to the military in that bubble because we think they're intimately connected, that you've seen some great growth, and the community's been successful at rallying behind the expansion of 19 Wing and the new, I'm going to get the terminology wrong, Center of Excellence there, or the, thank you very much, the SAR, yeah. You know, so that's been a nice win, and from our conversations, we feel like there's more. I don't have a lot of specifics that I can give you in terms of what more might be, but we just believe that there's, from what we've understand, there's strong potential there. Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
thanks very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Alternate Director Arnott.
Yeah, just so the fixed wing SAR that, yes, CVEDS was very instrumental in helping push through. That'll employ somewhere 50 to 75 members there, and those are new jobs. Those are people who have posted into Comox. They love it here. They don't want to leave. They've taken early retirement. Their families are going to grow here, and they make the community a better place. The rest of the area around the roundabout, yeah, that is going to be zone light industrial. What goes in there, we don't want to see storage units go in there. We want something that'll be providing jobs. We need to get the land first. We have it zoned light industrial, but it is privately owned right now, so we will get that. But yeah, we would like to capitalize on the fact that we have the airport, we have the wing, and this fixed wing SAR that I think will only bode well as we move forward with developing that area.
All right, and Director Arbour.
Thank you for your presentations. So representing Area A, the area south of here. I look forward to have some discussion on the seafood strategy. I don't think we've touched base yet. And looking at Area A, I'm looking at what is not in the strategy, perhaps. So I haven't heard about the First Nation element. Maybe that's inside culture, but they have a lot of ambitions around economic development, and I haven't heard much mention about them with our Comox partner. And the second would be, the second thing I haven't heard about, if I'm sitting on zoning for 3,000 homes in Area A, and that hasn't also come up. And over the next 10 years, I'm sure there'll be a lot of development happening there, which will be a huge economic driver for the valley. So those are the two pieces that I did not see in the strategy being addressed. And in terms of the shellfish, I would definitely have some concerns around growth without support from local residents in the area, and we can have more conversations about that. But thank you for your excellent work, and I don't know if those things will get captured or not, but it's just I try to think about what gets left out at the same time. Thank you.
If I may, just on the First Nations front, we have had one-on-one engagement with Comox First Nation, so not identified them specifically in the broader scheme of things, but they're an important partner. We had done some work with CVEDS on board construction and recommended First Nation representation there. So it's an important group. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's book a date to meet, because you're on my list, and we haven't connected for sure. And you've got some great ideas, and look forward to chatting with you more about them.
Excellent. There's been a great fulsome discussion here. I had one sort of comment, and it kind of goes back to the farming thing, which I think is been it's gotten a lot of attention, and I could talk a lot about technology, I assume, but I think it was covered quite well. You know, and I think it was maybe Mike earlier today who may have mentioned this. You know, I look at farming is you know, integral and important thing to do. I had the opportunity to run a dairy farm for a year, and I think Mike said this afternoon, like, one of the barriers is actually the cost of land. You know, and that, you know, that's a challenge. And I look at my kids right now are over in Manitoba visiting family who are getting out of farming because they own the land, but I can't remember what the cost was, but they got one of these big big machines that does all their stuff for them, and it's like $500,000 for the machine, and then every adapter is $100,000-200,000. So as Director Amir just said, like it's $1 million, and then you're tied to these contracts, and the new machine's all computerized, so you can't fix anything yourself, and so these unintended consequences, I think, and I don't know. I just that economic side of like, we can have the greatest place in the world, we can create these markets, but like, is it actually? I just from a financial perspective, is it financially realistic to say that somebody's going to come in and not just have to buy the land, but have to buy this equipment, have to maintain this equipment, and is that a viable thing for mom and pop farmers kind of thing?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, and what we're looking at is there are different models for, like, we've got an idea of like a family farm where there's one family lives on it, and maybe we need new models like cooperative farming, where there are examples of that, where there's farmers will get together and live on the land. And farm within, so that there's the cost of the land is shared more. I think you've got to look at rental models and leasing models more than we have in the past. Maybe some of the people who have some of this this land that's not being farmed, they're probably not farming because they don't want to be farmers, but maybe they want to lease. They're willing to lease the land or rent the land. There maybe have to be some changes in terms of the rules around additional housing on ALR land, but those regulations have to change with the reality that you bring up, that we've got to look for different models to keep farmers on the land and get new entrants on the land.
So I'm not a farmer, but I know some farmers. But I pay attention to some of this stuff. And so I think there's a couple things that come to mind here. First of all, the entirety of the Comox Valley could fit within a small area of the prairies, as we all know, right? So I think what's important is to consider what is being farmed, right? So if we're farming commoditized products, we need industrial equipment and vast tracts of land that is much larger than the entire Comox Valley. So we have an opportunity, in my opinion, to get more boutique, more unique, more value added that will fit with smaller producers. Like there's that, what's it called, the smart acre farming systems. Like there are novel systems and growing methodologies and products that have higher value margins and opportunities that I don't think we're doing much of here. And while you might say that cannabis production is going to change big tracts of land in our province, and it already is, there's all sorts of other really fantastic things that fit in our growing ecosystem here. And that is another inspirational thing for the farmers that are here, because we just don't have, it's not an apples to apples thing in comparison to big ag. We don't have big ag.
And just one more thing, I should mention that North Island College has a market gardener program that they currently have ongoing in Port Alberni, but they're planning to bring it to the Comox Valley, and there it's where the individual gets an acre of land, and they share tools, and so that there's not just the land they first get is free, but then there's the tools that they're using are shared, so that there's a cost reductions there too. And so I think it's very cool that they're bringing the program here, because that's the way to begin to increase the new farmer pool, and it's a knowledgeable pool, an educated pool.
Excellent. Thanks very much. I don't see any further questions. It's only 7:30, but I do want to thank you guys for your excellent presentation tonight, for everybody for asking great questions, the board sitting back there and staff, just making sure that everybody's staying on track, and hopefully everybody got to enjoy a little bit of a meal there. And with that, we have another meeting to do right after this, so we're going to let you guys go. I'll take a vote on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? You guys passed. That's excellent. We'll let you go. Thank you. And we'll just take a couple minutes to clear the room, and then we'll go in camera.
Thanks. That was really great. Oh, yeah. Looking forward to seeing the final bits. Look forward to getting there. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Can you just go over here?